Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto accidentally swapped bodies with Ino Yamanaka. When a young Ino tries to use the Shintenshin for the first time on Naruto, something goes wrong and the two find themselves temporarily stuck in the other's body. A series of moments depicting the evolution of their relationship, from acquaintances to friends to something more, all by crossing that metaphorical line created when a boy and a girl forge a bond. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 4, Crossing the Line. Ino. The blonde rushes down the stairs and into the kitchen. Yeah. Yamanaka Keiko turns around from preparing Ino's birthday dinner to look at her daughter. Did you invite Naruto-kun over for dinner tonight? The older female places her hands on her hips and fixes Ino with a reprimanding look. Yamanaka Ino, I haven't seen that boy in 2 weeks. If he's not here for your birthday tonight, I'll be severely disappointed. How do I know if he's eating well or not? It's Naruto, all he does is eat. When that answer doesn't have the desired effect of placating her mother, Ino sighs. Okay, I'll go let him know. Her mother gives an approving nod before turning around to continue preparing that evening's meal. Ino finds that, as convenient as it would be to blame her mother for Naruto's lack of invitation to dinner, it's really her own inadequacy which has prevented her from communicating such information to her best friend. In truth, she has been studiously avoiding her fellow blonde, and if his distinct lack of presence is any indication, the reverse also seems likely, ever since the night of his promotion to Chunin. She still doesn't really know how to deal with him kissing her. The blonde arrives at Naruto's apartment with a hastily written note in hand telling him to come to dinner, determined to put off facing him for as long as possible. She raps on his door and then slips the piece of paper underneath before Naruto can open it. Then Ino quickly departs for home as a thick knot of tension coils in her stomach. Several hours later, Inoichi opens the door of the Yamanaka household to grant Naruto entrance. The two men shake hands before the younger male moves into the kitchen at Keiko's prompting of, "Is that Naruto-kun?" "Evening, Keiko-san," he returns with a grin, allowing the older woman to embrace him. Keiko holds him at arm's length to get a better look at him. "Oh dear, you don't look so good. Have you been taking care of yourself?" Naruto shoots Inoichi, who has followed him in, a look, to which the Yamanaka clan head shrugs and rolls his eyes, as if to say he should be used to such treatment by now. "Of course," he replies, and his voice changes to the upbeat tone he used when he was younger. "As a future Hokage, I have to know how to stay in peak health." A restrained snort catches everyone's attention. Ino has come down the stairs, wearing white capri pants and a pale orange shirt with a V-cut at the neck held together by a simple cross-stitch. Naruto moves toward her and bends down to give her a friendly peck on the cheek. "Happy birthday, Ino." She tries to restrain the blush that crosses her fair features. "Ah, thanks, Naruto." Keiko claps her hands together, breaking the strange stillness that has befallen the kitchen. Time to eat. Dinner is a bit of an awkward affair for Ino. The platinum blonde avoids making direct eye contact with her best friend, allowing her mother to attract his attention while her father's eyes flit perceptively between the two teenagers. Ino is uncomfortable with the scrutiny, but only because she is worried about what Inoichi might do to Naruto if he figures out what's going on between them. "Not that there's anything between us." When the meal ends, Naruto asks if Ino will accompany him home so that he can give her her birthday gift. Keiko shoos them out, wrangling Inoichi into helping her with the dishes so Ino can leave with Naruto. Their walk is silent for a number of minutes, Naruto striding along with his hands in his pockets while Ino twiddles her fingers nervously behind her back. "You've been avoiding me," he notes, somewhat amused. "What did you expect?" She hisses in a mixture of embarrassment and anger. "You kissed me." Naruto chuckles while scratching the back of his head with one hand. "It's not funny." She insists. The temptation to stomp her foot childishly like she did on that night is strong, but she tamps down on it. Very quietly, as if unsure whether she should actually ask it, Ino continues, "Why did you do it? What were you thinking?" Naruto shrugs in a careless fashion, and Ino resists the urge to punch him. "It felt like the right thing to do," he responds. You're very pretty. You're very pretty, Ino-chan, a 13-year-old Naruto says as they walk back from the mission engaging Princess Fuku to Daimyo Shikara. Ino shakes her head to rid herself of the memory. That's completely beside the point. It is the point, he insists. Haven't you ever thought about me like that? No. She shrieks impulsively. Ouch, jokes the male blonde. I didn't mean it like that, Ino backtracks, realizing how defensive she sounds. First you were interested in Sakura, then Hinata told you that she loved you. And you're my best friend, she tries, feeling like she's grappling desperately for excuses. Quietly, she repeats, I've just never thought about you like that. Naruto moves so he's in front of her, and Ino realizes that they've reached his building. Let's say I believe that, what about now? Ino grasps for words that don't seem to exist. The taller blonde is staring at her as if she's an interesting curio. Dressed in her everyday clothes, nervously biting her lip and her one eye obscured by her bangs, Ino looks much more vulnerable than she really is. He reaches out to grab the end of her ponytail and tugs it gently so that Ino's eyes are aligned with his, though they're averted. Hey, he coaxes, and the unspoken look at me forces baby blue to meet crystal blue. I don't know what this is, but it's different from how I felt for Sakura when we were younger. He inches forward just a little, so that his intention is obvious enough that Ino has time to reject it if she so desires. I'm willing to give this a try if you are. Closer. And if you just wanna be friends, I'm okay with that, too. We'll just forget this whole thing ever happened. Closer. So, what do you want, Ino? Ino stands motionless, mind spinning. Having Naruto so close and acting so serious and proposing such a wild idea is making it extremely difficult to think properly. Finding nothing but patience and care reflected in his blue eyes, and remembering back to the kiss 2 weeks ago, Ino decides that maybe it won't be so bad to date her best friend. She nods imperceptibly, but doesn't move. Naruto takes the initiative and kisses her softly, just so she's aware of how tentative he is with this new development in their relationship as well. The taller teen breaks off after several moments, but leans forward to whisper in her ear, "Happy birthday, Ino," kissing her on the cheek just as he did earlier. It's only after he's been gone for several minutes that Ino realizes Naruto never actually gave her a birthday present. But then again, she thinks, a pleased smile crawling across her lips, maybe he did. Ino's hands shake slightly as she ties the white obi around her deep violet yukata. Despite being October, it's too warm for a full-on kimono, and the blonde's hope is that the more summery outfit will provide more breathing room during the annual Kyubi Vanquishing Festival. More importantly, and nerve-wracking, is that tonight is her first date with Naruto. It would have been earlier, but first her team, and then his team, were assigned week-long missions which took up the time between their birthdays. Ino doesn't begrudge the extra time. It actually feels quite appropriate to have their first date be at the same place they first truly spent time together. That doesn't change the fact that she still feels that tonight can either make or break their relationship, platonic or otherwise. She jumps slightly when a voice calls her name, whirling around to find her father standing in the doorway. Inoichi looks momentarily surprised at catching her off guard, but then steps into the room with a chuckle. "I don't think I've ever seen you so nervous for a date before," he comments. "I'm not nervous," she denies. When the older Yamanaka shoots her a disbelieving look, Ino deflates slightly. "Okay, maybe I'm a little nervous. But, it's Naruto. Did you ever think we would go out?" "Yes," Inoichi deadpants. "In fact, I owe Shikaku money for getting the timing wrong." "Dad." "Oh, right. Look Ino, Naruto likes you for you. Just pretend that this is any other night." "But it's not." Her father shakes his head. "That's not the point. Don't think about what could happen or where this might lead. Just go along with it and let yourself have a good time. You're best friends, you're together all the time, just let yourself have fun. Naruto's a good kid, I don't think you'll have any problems. You might end up finding everything you've ever wanted." "Okay, Dad." She smiles at him gratefully. "Thanks." A knock on the front door echoes upstairs, causing father and daughter to look towards Ino's open doorway. "I'll go get that," Inoichi says, exiting his daughter's room. Before he heads out, he looks back at her and asks, "Can I give him the speech?" "You just said that Naruto was a good kid." "I know," shrugs the older blonde, "but it's tradition to threaten bodily harm to your dates regardless of how much I like them." He heads down the stairs at Ino's exasperated sigh, calling back up to her, "That wasn't a no." She rushes through finishing getting ready, unsure if her father is serious about intimidating Naruto. When she arrives downstairs, they seem to be getting along well enough, and Ino takes a moment to admire Naruto, dressed in a light gray yukata with an orange obi. Inoichi notices her presence first, for he nods his head in her direction and says, "Have fun. And don't forget what we talked about." Ino isn't sure whether he's talking to her or Naruto. The platinum blonde drags Naruto out the door before Inoichi can say anything else, and it takes several blocks for her to slow down and realize that they're walking arm in arm. Sorry about that," she offers. "You know how Dad can get." "All too well," he chuckles. "Really, it wasn't as bad as you probably think." "I don't." "You look beautiful tonight," he continues. "I didn't get to tell you before, given how quickly we left," he jabs teasingly. Naruto's looking at her with that same expression he's worn the previous times he kissed her, and Ino isn't sure how to respond. Remembering her father's words, she mock pouts, "So I'm not beautiful every other night." The spiky-haired blonde holds up his hands in playful surrender. "You're right, I'm sorry. You just stand out especially so tonight." Ino flushes a little at the compliment, unused to her friend acting so flirtatious. "So, what's the plan?" Naruto shrugs. "No real plan. I just figured we could go to the festival together, do whatever comes to mind." "Anything you're particularly interested in?" "Nope." She smiles at him. "Let's just enjoy ourselves." They enter the festival, which Naruto almost feels bad for attending, given his changed relationship with the Kyuubi, and start walking around, taking in the sights and games. Naruto buys Ino a small bowl of pudding, as well as several sticks of dango for himself, while they wander around, and the female blonde points out a reenactment of her date's defeat of pain. "I think they're celebrating the wrong thing," he laughs. "Maybe not. It is your birthday today," she points out. "That's as good a time as any to celebrate the hero of Konoha's defeat over Akatsuki's leader." Naruto rolls his eyes at the title he's been bestowed, but says nothing else. The rest of the night passes by in much the same relaxed atmosphere. They laugh at the image of an exasperated Sakura accompanying Sai, smile at an eating contest Kiba challenges Chojitu, with a bored Shikamaru serving as referee, and watch with amusement as Tenten drags Neji away from overseeing Hinata to play games, Lee following the duo, and shouting challenges to the Hyuga, while Shino escorts his female teammate around the festival. All in all, it feels like every other night spent in each other's company. Ino mulls over that revelation as Naruto walks her home around midnight. The taller blonde reaches for her hand, brushing it with the pads of his fingers, but doesn't grasp it. It's the first time he's shown any form of hesitancy with regard to their potential relationship, and Ino finds herself a bit relieved because of it. "Did you have fun tonight?" he asks. "Yeah," she smiles. "Thanks for being my date." "Back at you." In the silence that follows, Ino reaches out and grabs her fellow blonde's hand, lacing their fingers together. She can tell the action startles him by the way his head swivels towards her, but it only lasts a moment before he squeezes her hand in response. When they reach the entrance to the Yamanaka compound, Ino unclasps their hands and maneuvers herself to face him. "So?" she begins. "So?" he echoes when she doesn't continue. "If this," she gestures between them, "is something you want to continue, then I'm willing to go for it." Naruto's face brightens. "Really?" "Yeah, really. This could be really great, and we should do it." She takes a deep breath and then takes a step forward. Naruto watches her with an expression that's part curiosity, part excitement. For the first time, Ino embraces her usual confidence and initiates the kiss. "Happy birthday, Naruto." What? Ino looks down, averting her eyes shyly. She has ruminated on her feelings for 2 days, trying to work out exactly where her emotions lie. Debates on how good an idea it is to tell him have bounced around in her mind, predicting how he is likely to react. In the end, she realizes that it's Naruto she's involved with, someone who will accept whatever she says no matter what, and it is this conclusion that spurs her forward with her decision. She looks up at him through her bangs, waiting until she can again speak confidently. "I love you, Naruto," she says with more boldness than she feels. Naruto's crystal blue eyes widen marginally, his mouth opening and closing like that of a landed fish. Seconds feel like hours, and Ino feels a strange chill seeping into her body. Why isn't he saying anything? Why doesn't he tell me he loves me, too? The beginning of tears prickles at her eyes, and she blinks rapidly to get rid of them. Don't cry, she thinks, don't you dare cry in front of him. Naruto swallows thickly, gotta go. He disappears quicker than she can track, and Ino feels her resolve, and something much more fragile, break. She falls to her knees and covers her face with her hands as the first salty drops escape. Hours later, Shikamaru steps out from the shadows of the fourth Hokage's carved visage upon the Hokage monument, hands buried deep in his pockets. Sitting with his knees held to his chest is Naruto, staring at the sunset over the treetops of Konoha's forest. "I spoke with Ino," Shikamaru says, not mentioning how he found her in Naruto's home. The blonde flinches, not in surprise at the additional presence, but at the slight edge in his friend's tone. Almost a minute passes in absolute silence before Naruto whispers, "She told me she loves me." Confusion and, more surprisingly, sorrow lace his words. Shikamaru sighs. "Troublesome," he mutters, voice returning to its normal, dry tone. It's difficult to stay upset with the other boy when he appears as lost and pitiful as an orphaned puppy. The shadow user moves to sit beside Naruto. "I don't really understand what the problem is. You've been dating for a couple months now. Shouldn't this be a natural progression of your relationship?" "I don't." He begins, but then stops, shakes his head, and says quietly, "I didn't think anyone could love me, I mean, that one time with Hinata took me by surprise." "Do you really believe that?" Shikamaru interrupts. Naruto opens his mouth to speak, but the Nara cuts across him again. "The Yamanakas took you in when you were 10. Every time Ino Ichiaji-san and Keiko Oba-san come over, they can't stop talking to my parents about you like you're their biological son. It's almost annoying how proud of you they are. And what about Jiraiya-sama, who took you under his wing, or Tsunade-sama, who sees you like the grandson she never had? How about your friends, the people you've sworn to protect with your life? Do you think we don't care about you, that we don't grow stronger so you don't have to bear that burden? Can you honestly say you never thought you'd be loved? I know you're not that stupid." Naruto remains quiet for a long time following Shikamaru's diatribe, thinking back on moments spent with the people his friend has mentioned. "You're right," he finally admits, "I guess I just never thought of those relationships that way before. They were always just precious people that I needed to protect. I didn't consider how everyone felt about me." Clearly. A wry chuckle escapes Naruto's mouth at the blunt honesty, but then he turns pensive. "But it's different with Ino. I feel like, if anything happened to her, I wouldn't know what to do, like I wouldn't feel complete." The blonde trails off, allowing the heartfelt statement to linger. Is that what that kind of love is? He wonders, lapsing into silence. As the last vestiges of the sun's rays disappear, Shikamaru stands up and cracks his back, moving to the shadows of the Hokage monument. "Hey, where are you going?" Naruto calls. "Home," responds the dark-haired teen with a lazy wave. "You have your answer. Just remember that if you ever hurt her again, Choji and I will come after you, and hero of Konoha or not, we'll beat the shit out of you," he warns, and then he's gone. Naruto gives a half-smile before rising to his feet and disappearing. He reappears in front of his own abode. The door is closed and he hears nothing from inside, but given that he lives in a shinobi village, that never means anything. Feeling somewhat foolish, he raps on the door. Despite it being his home, he doesn't feel right intruding on Ino's solitude, assuming she's still there. "Go away!" she shouts, and something heavy and unsettling drops into his stomach. He can't tell if she's more upset or angry, or some parts both, but he knows he's the cause of her distress, and the knowledge is like a lead weight. Naruto fishes for his key and inserts it into the lock, opening the door and stepping across the threshold. Instincts scream at him to move, and he twists nimbly, shutting the door behind him in the same movement. There are multiple thuds behind him, and Naruto peeks at the wall to find 4 of his kunai embedded in it. Ino. Just, don't talk right now, Naruto. I don't want to listen to whatever it is you want to say. Her voice is devoid of emotion, and Naruto thinks that the kunai piercing his heart would have hurt less than this. Still, he falls silent at her command, not because she's necessarily intimidating, but because exacerbating the situation by disobeying is the last thing he wants to do. Slowly, he steps forward, taking care to make his movements measured and deliberate until he's within Ino's personal space. Wary, because experience has taught him that little is more dangerous than an upset kunoichi, he gently pulls his girlfriend into his arms and holds her there. I'm sorry, he whispers in her ear, deciding that now is a good time to talk. I didn't think I would ever know what it felt like to love someone. But someone reminded me that I have friends who care about me, a family who looks after me, you, and I realized that I'll never have to worry about that. Ino sniffles against his chest. Didn't you think that you'd love someone at some point? People don't become involved in relationships if they don't think they can fall in love. You assume that I think that far ahead, he jokes. A weak snort is the only response he receives, and he knows that he's at least earned a little of her forgiveness. Feeling brave, he creates a little space between them. Ino. She tilts her head up slightly to meet his gaze. I love you, too. What's up, Granny? Tsunade glares at him. You could stand to have a bit more respect for your superiors, brat. Naruto shrugs unconcernedly, and the blonde woman resists the urge to rub her temples. Straightening her back to appear more professional, she laces her fingers together and says, Uzumaki Naruto. Taking into consideration your mission history, battlefield achievements, and collection of skills, politicking abilities notwithstanding, it has been decided that you are fit for greater responsibilities. The Sunin smiles at him. It is with great pride that I bestow upon you the title of Jonin. Naruto's face lights up. Really? You mean it? The slug Sunin rolls her eyes. I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it, brat. She waits patiently while Naruto has a small victory celebration in her office, wanting to let him get it out of his system before she continues with her news. In all honesty, even given the fact that Naruto was only promoted to Chunin 6 months prior, the Jonin title is a long time coming. Making it official has been the most time-consuming aspect of the whole thing, especially amidst Konoha's rebuilding. Tsunade clears her throat when Naruto doesn't show any signs of stopping. There's more. The spiky-haired blonde returns his attention to his grandmother figure, though a wide grin never leaves his face. Now that you've reached the rank of Jonin, you're legally allowed to claim the possessions of your father. The Yondaime's things. The busty blonde nods. Yes. Unfortunately, most of what was in storage for you was lost when Akatsuki destroyed the village. Oh. Naruto looks suddenly downcast, and Tsunade feels a pang of guilt for bringing up the subject. Being the last descendant of the Senju clan, she understands well exactly how important it is to have something tangible to remember family by, more so if the family has never been known. However, she continues, I did manage to find something. Your parents had a house, one which they were planning on raising you in. It's not exactly the same one, but as all the buildings were reconstructed in the same neighborhoods and the deed to the house is still in the Yondaime's name, it passes down to you. I have a house. Only if you want it. Naruto whoops excitedly and jumps over the desk to hug Tsunade. Alright, brat, she laughs, maneuvering her arm out of his grip to set the key on the desk. That's enough of that. Now get out of here, I've got work to do. Thanks, Granny. Almost an hour later, Naruto is walking down the street at a fast clip, Ino trailing just a step behind him. Naruto, where are we going? You'll see. Naruto, she says, exasperated, you dragged me away from the shop to go on this wild goose chase. It doesn't even seem like you know where you're going. Some of us have other jobs, you know. Hee, sorry Ino. I'm just really excited, that's all. And we're almost there. Just be patient. Ino crosses her arms and huffs, but stops her grousing. Several minutes later, the pair arrives at a residential section of the village comprised of various single-story houses. Naruto walks up to one and inserts a key in the lock, prompting Ino to raise an eyebrow in confusion. He walks through the door and beckons his girlfriend to follow him in. Naruto ventures through the house, staring around in silent awe while the other blonde observes him and her surroundings with a careful eye. The home appears quaint, with the main room connected directly to the kitchen by a large opening framed by 2 protective walls, and 3 other doorways leading to a bedroom, bathroom, and what Ino assumes to be a guest room. Naruto, she starts when he surfaces from exploring the bedroom. What is this? This was my father's house. Ino is surprised by this. The Yondaime? Really? Kinda. I mean, the original house was destroyed when Pain invaded the village, but when everything was rebuilt, this is the one that replaced where Dad's house used to be, and it's mine now. According to Tsunade-Baa-chan, anyway, he adds. When Naruto wanders into the guest room, Ino follows him in and stands in the doorway as he slowly paces the empty room. I wonder, he says quietly, if this is where Mom and Dad were gonna raise me. Ino watches him lift a hand and run it along the rail of an imaginary crib. There's an expression on his face that she's seen before, whenever he gets to thinking about the family he has never really known. The Yamanaka clears her throat after a bout of silence. So, are you going to stay here? Yeah, I think they would like that. He turns suddenly to look at her, and she's momentarily struck by exactly how alike to the 4th Hokage he looks. It's almost as if the spirit of Namikaze Minato is settling back into his old home. Move in with me? Baby blue eyes widen in mild surprise. What? Let's live together, he proposes in a more normal voice, though his eyes remain vibrant with energy. You can finally move away from the Yamanaka complex, and we can be just like my parents were. Isn't this part of the whole, He squints, trying to remember something he was told, natural progression of a relationship. That doesn't sound like you. Some of the stuff Shikamaru says sticks, he admits. But that's not really the point. What do you say, will you do it? Ino considers the idea. She admits that it will be nice to finally get away from her parents, and being around Naruto on a more permanent basis like when they were children is a pleasant notion. Her imagination dives into what it might have been like for Uzumaki Kushina and Namikaze Minato almost 20 years before, and suddenly the images of herself and Naruto overlap those of his parents. It takes a lot of focus to not wonder what it will be like for her and Naruto to raise a child in the spare bedroom. I'm clearly getting a little too far ahead of myself. Naruto is staring at her expectantly but patiently when she comes out of her reverie. Okay, she says, let's do it. Naruto opens the door to their home, face unusually stoic. It's the distinct lack of expression that sets off alarms to Ino. She's known her fellow blonde for so long that seeing him looking so bland and emotionless is frightening. There's hesitance in her posture as she reaches out with one hand, pantomiming a needy grab. Naruto? She asks, worry clearly lacing her tone. He sighs heavily, trying to release the weight burdening his shoulders. I've been assigned to Umbu, he explains wearily. According to Tsunade-Baa-chan, being in Umbu is part of the test to see if I'm ready to become Hokage, something about understanding the sacrifices of your soldiers. I just passed my initiation. Ino suddenly becomes aware that he's dressed in the typical Umbu garb, black pants, skin-tight black shirt, and the protective armor top. The long black gloves and metallic forearm guards, as well as his mask, are hanging from a belt. In contrast, she's merely wearing one of Naruto's t-shirts and a pair of his boxers. She's suddenly, and inexplicably, as she wears his clothes all the time, embarrassed at her state of dress. Naruto moves a little closer to her. Ino's face is frozen in a mixture of shock, at the situation, and fright, for his well-being, but when he speaks his tone is soft, as if he's comforting an injured animal. Ino, are you okay with this? I mean, I can always go tell Granny that. No, she responds, not even letting him complete the thought. His dream is, always has been, to become Hokage, and despite her nervousness about her boyfriend's new position, she knows that she needs to be supportive of this opportunity. Whether she fully agrees with it or not. You'll be careful, right? A shadow of his normal grin crosses Naruto's features. Of course. He falls silent as her eyes find his bare left shoulder, drawn almost magnetically to the spot. The standard umbu tattoo, a design of swirls inked in red, signifying his allegiance to the Hokage, is alluring, almost hypnotic. Ino is transfixed by the sight of it. Ino. Naruto seems unsure of this new development in his girlfriend, watching intently as she slowly approaches him. She raises her index finger and places it upon the tip of the tattoo symbol. As she gently traces the full design, Naruto shivers, the action one of a remembered pain rather than tenderness from the new addition to his skin. Ino replaces her finger with her lips, letting them merely linger in a soft kiss on his shoulder. The gesture is somehow innocent and sensual all at once, and Naruto allows his eyes to close in contentment. A strange humming emerges unbidden from his throat, and Naruto attaches his lips to a suddenly tantalizing spot on Ino's neck. She moans at the contact, and the male blonde's hands crawl underneath his shirt. They've never gone this far before, but neither can explain why, because the feelings the ministrations elicit are raw and amazing. Ino squeaks as her beau picks her up bridal style and carries her to their room. Their pulses race and their bodies react to the sensations of one another as the minutes tick by. Both are approaching 20 and in the prime of their careers, young and caught up in each other. Yet neither has experience in this uncharted territory. Despite traveling with Jiraiya, the self-proclaimed super pervert, Naruto has been almost completely oblivious to the allure of women and too nervous to move fast with Ino and ruin things. On the other side, Ino knows the seriousness of such an act, the emotional attachment associated with it, and she's been too fearful of drawing out the same reaction as when she told Naruto she loved him. In the moment, none of those insecurities cross either of their minds. The night is fulfilling, if not awkward and slightly clumsy, their inexperience clear. Both are driven by instinct, by tugs of consciousness demanding do this and do that. There is a strange satisfaction and emotional significance to the mutual loss of virginity, but, trapped in the act of consummation, it is thrown to the wayside and ignored. Ino ponders the tumultuous thoughts crashing in her mind as she basks in her afterglow. She peers at Naruto as he sleeps, uneasy and content, though she blushes to think of the cause, smile on his features. Her cheeks get even rosier as she considers the other blonde's body, an ideal sculpture of musculature built within the confines of a lithe, youthful form. He seems the perfect specimen of a man both physically and mentally, gentle and caring in both word and deed. As Naruto rolls over, his arm falls across her petite waist, causing a warmth to course through her. He instinctively pulls her closer, their nude bodies pressing flush together. Ino realizes that the line she's associated with their friendship, formed, blurred, teetered on the edge of, is suddenly far behind them, crossed well beyond any point of return. The idea of her and Naruto becoming so entwined in such a fashion is scary, unexpected, nerve-wracking. Ino snuggles deeper into Naruto's embrace and grins. She's looking forward to it. Naruto returns home from training, tired and in desperate need of a shower. The house is a little quiet, but it's early in the afternoon and Ino's schedule normally keeps her out for another couple of hours. He slips into the bedroom and grabs a clean uniform to change into, but an unusual odor catches his attention. A frown mars his features as he tries to place the scent, and it's only as he checks the area between the bed and the far wall that he recognizes the metallic smell as blood. Blue eyes widen in horror at the sight that greets him. Ino. Ino is lying on the floor in a small pool of blood, her normally fair features pale and face streaked with sweat. Naruto is immediately by her side, and when he takes her into his arms, her skin is clammy to the touch. His nine-tails chakra cloak springs to life, and in a flash, the house is empty. The blonde reappears in the Hokage's office, his sudden appearance startling both Tsunade and Shizune. What Tsunade begins. Granny. He bellows. You've gotta help Ino. Something's wrong with her, there was blood all over the floor, and. Tsunade immediately enters medic mode. Shizune, cancel any appointments I have, she orders. Naruto, go to the hospital, I'll meet you there. Now. She yells when he continues to stand motionless, lost. The younger blonde leaves in a flash of chakra, and when Tsunade's body flickers to the hospital, he's standing in the atrium with a panicked expression on his face. I need an operating room, she snaps at the nurse. Right away, Tsunade-sama. Naruto, drop the cloak and follow me. He obeys both directives, mainly because of the authority in the Hokage's voice, his body moving on autopilot behind her. They arrive at an operating room in short order, and Tsunade takes Ino from Naruto's arms. Stay here, she commands before hurrying through the doors. Naruto waits in a chair outside the operating room, twiddling his fingers in a fit of nervousness. Tsunade has been working on his girlfriend for what feels like days, even though it's only been a number of hours, and Naruto's mind has been a blank buzz of static. He's only recently thought to send out a shadow clone to the Yamanakas, and its dispelling indicates that Keiko is on her way to the hospital. Inoichi is out of the village, which the blonde finds fortunate for his own physical health. There's no telling what the Yamanaka clan head will do upon discovering his daughter's status. For that matter, the Jinchuriki has absolutely no idea what's wrong with his girlfriend. The amount of blood leaking from her body was startling, but the fact that there were no visible injuries was more worrying, as it meant that there was nothing he could do to help. And more than anything, Naruto hates to feel useless. Tsunade steps through the doors of the operating room at that moment and stands before Naruto, who jumps to his feet, face painted with anxiety. Ino had an ectopic pregnancy, she tells him. A what? His ears catch on one word. She was pregnant. Yes. The Hokage takes a seat in Naruto's abandoned chair before explaining, an ectopic pregnancy is one where the embryo implants somewhere other than the uterus. Naruto's expression of mixed confusion and panic doesn't change, and Tsunade comes to the conclusion that the medical jargon is a bit too much for him. The baby was growing in the wrong spot. It caused internal bleeding and put her in a state of hypovol shock, she says instead. Is she okay? I removed the embryo and gave her a blood transfusion to restore what she lost. The older blonde offers Naruto a wan smile. You saved her. Naruto releases a breath he doesn't know he's been holding. Thank goodness, I made it in time. Well, yes, but you actually saved her. When Naruto still doesn't get what she's saying, Tsunade elaborates, you and Ino are the same blood type. The blood we used for the transfusion was blood you donated. It's a good thing Ino convinced you to give, isn't it? The blonde wipes the beginning of tears from his eyes. Yeah. Then Tsunade sighs. Naruto, I fixed the physiological issues, but these types of traumatic incidences aren't without other repercussions. What do you mean? Can Ino not get pregnant again? Infertility is always a possibility, but the likelihood of that is low. The problem is that there might be some psychological damage related to conceiving again. Your relationship with Ino might be different for a little while. Naruto nods slowly. But it'll get better, right? Tsunade remains silent. Right. He tries again, weakly. Only time will tell. Naruto staggers and slumps against the wall, just as Yamanaka Keiko bustles down the hallway. I'm going to move Ino into a recovery room now. You're both welcome to visit. She stands up, turns, and walks away, so she doesn't have to see the boy she thinks of as a grandson collapse into Keiko's arms and sob like a child. I'm gonna ask her to marry me. Mantis, Dragon, and Falcon all raise their heads to look at Boar, the firelight amongst them highlighting the markings on their porcelain umbu masks. Boar wishes for a moment that he can see his friends' expressions, but even though their mission has been completed early and they're deep within the land of fire, protocol dictates that they must keep their identities hidden. He finds it a bit stupid, given that they all know who the others are, but he also understands the mechanisms of umbu, and that secrecy is paramount, especially in the field. It's why the conversation he's trying to have will contain only vague references to people and situations. Congratulations, Dragon offers. It is quite a large commitment, advises Falcon. Are you sure you're ready? More importantly, is she ready? I think so. So she has recovered from the incident. Boar is quiet for a long moment. Truthfully, the time following the ectopic pregnancy has been rough on both him and his significant other. Her desire for intimacy dropped for several months, and he often waffled between accepting missions and staying in Konoha to watch over her, only leaving after she reminded him that his team was counting on him. The normally outspoken and confident woman he knew was replaced by a more reserved, introspective individual who he wasn't sure how to act around. Living together was hard for a period following the pregnancy, with neither person sure of how to approach the other. Eventually, the woman's normal personality began to shine through, and every day, Bor finds another piece of his girlfriend rising to the surface. It gives him hope that their relationship will fully return to its status quo very soon. He nods at Falcon. She's strong, things are getting better little by little. That is good to hear, speaks Mantis, but I do not believe you have addressed the underlying issue, by which I mean the subject of future generations. You mean kids? Bor interprets. Correct. Why is that important? Because she is from a clan, and thus a line of succession is expected. Dragon snorts, though the sound is muffled by her mask and the sound of her whetstone sharpening one of her Kusarigama. Damn clan politics. Mantis spares her a blank glance. Even through the mask, Bor knows exactly what his expression is, before turning back to continue his conversation. They exist regardless of any personal feelings on the matter, so it is important to be aware of them. It is one of the reasons why meddling in the romantic lives of others is inadvisable. Bor winces. Before the pregnancy mishap occurred, he had the thought that Mantis was a bit lonely, especially since the bug-masked Umbu was on a team with people in relationships. Confiding such information in his girlfriend resulted in her suggesting a double date, setting Mantis up with his female former teammate. While it went well, Mantis assured Bor afterwards that such a pairing was unlikely to have the desired outcome, though he did thank Bor for his concern regarding his personal life. I said I was sorry about that, he mutters. You don't think that I'll be prevented from marrying her, do you? Unlikely, says Falcon. Her clan is hardly as strict in regulating unions as, say, the Hyuga, and even someone like Neji was afforded some modicum of leniency with whom he chose for partnership, despite his standing and reputation. Plus you've been on good terms with her family for a long time, Dragon adds. This is all true, Mantis points out, but not my point. I am merely trying to prepare you for an obstacle you might be unaware of. As I said, there are certain expectations placed upon specific members of a clan. He pauses and then turns so the gaze of his porcelain mask is fixed on Falcon. I admit, I am surprised that someone of Neji's position hasn't yet been required to provide the Hyuga with progeny. Bor smothers his laughter with a cough at the imperceptible reactions of both Falcon and Dragon at Mantis' jibe. His imagination conjures an image of the face behind Falcon's mask rendered speechless out of its normal stoicism, and he again restrains a snort of amusement. Falcon clears his throat. Yes, well, I've heard that Neji is on a bit of a time constraint in that regard. What? Dragon growls dangerously. She suddenly has a wake eyes as she pointed at Falcon's chest. And do you happen to know when Neji was going to inform his wife about this requirement? Something tells me they'll have a conversation as soon as he returns from his mission, Bor comments, bemused. Dragon and Falcon turn to him, and Bor can feel the glares they shoot him through their masks. He holds his hands up in a placating gesture. Not that it's any of our business. It is merely food for thought, Mantis concludes, ignoring the suddenly tense atmosphere. Bor considers the words of his teammates all the way home the next morning. He feels that it's perhaps still too early to bring up the subject of children, regardless of what her clan expects, but he also now understands a bit more of what he has to look forward to in the future. None of that really matters, however, for when Bor returns home and removes his mask, Uzumaki Naruto kneels before Yamanaka Ino and asks her to marry him, and her response is an emphatic yes. As they embrace, Naruto realizes how wily Tsunade is for assigning him the Bor mask, and wonders how she knew he and Ino would get to this point. Naruto stands before Tsunade in a black kimono, black haori, and grey hakama, fidgeting. Part of it is simply because of the weight of the clothes he's dressed in, and he briefly admires Shino's ability to wear so many heavy layers all the time, but another part is born from the nerves of knowing that he is getting married. He watches alongside the Hokage, Shizune, Irika, Shikamaru, Choji, and Keiko as Inoichi accompanies Ino towards the dais he's standing on in the shrine, and the blonde finds himself rendered absolutely speechless. Ino is resplendent in the traditional white kimono of a bride, and Naruto thinks that she's never been more beautiful than in this moment. All the blonde can do is keep his eyes on his bride as she steps up to stand across from him. Tsunade officiates the wedding, walking them through all the traditional rituals of the ceremony until they share their first kiss as husband and wife. It's the happiest day in Naruto's 21 years of life, a title which has been replaced over and over ever since meeting Ino over a decade ago. Somehow, he feels like this one will stay at the top for a long time. The group leaves the shrine and head for Training Ground 11, which is outfitted for the wedding reception. Their friends and family are already there, consisting of the rest of the Konoha 11 and their dates, Sai, their teachers, Inoichi's teammates, and several members of the Yamanaka clan, and all of them applaud when Naruto and Ino enter hand in hand. Both blondes are split apart by their guests, all of whom approach and offer various forms of congratulations and well wishes for the future. After Sakura drags Sai off, as a preemptive measure, before the male says something inappropriate, Naruto finds himself approached by Neji, Tenten, Shino, and a woman he doesn't recognize. "Welcome to married life," Neji says, the corner of his mouth tilted up in a slight grin. "You're in for quite an adventure." Tenten nudges him. "Hush, you. He's actually very happy for you, Naruto," she addresses the blonde, "he just doesn't know how to show it because the Hyuga don't believe in emotions." "I can't even imagine why you married him then," Naruto jokes. "I'm a sucker for stoicism, I suppose," Tenten banters good-naturedly. "Though there are days when dealing with certain aspects of the clan make me regret my decision." "Clan politics, huh?" Neji shakes his head in a don't-ask motion, an expression of resigned exasperation twisting his features. He winks at Neji. "Someone wise told me that the Yamanaka clan isn't as strict as the Hyuga in their traditions, so perhaps I won't have as much issues to deal with." "You are most likely correct," Shino interrupts, "but there might be other politics you will have to deal with." "What am I referring to?" "You are the direct descendant of the Yondaime Hokage and one of the few remaining Uzumaki in the world. It is possible for you to re-establish your own clan here in Konoha, which might raise issues with the Yamanaka clan." "Shino," Naruto acknowledges, "good to see you. You're as well versed in clan politics as usual," he continues wanly. "I find it prudent to be knowledgeable in topics that are likely to affect me." "I would expect no less. And it seems as if you'll have to draw on that information sooner rather than later," the blonde smirks, nodding at the girl next to Shino. "Perhaps," Shino concedes, adjusting his glasses and inclining his head at his friend. "Kuri and I wish you the best of luck with your union." The girl also nods at Naruto, and then all four depart to mingle with the other guests, leaving Naruto to ruminate on how focused his friends are with clan politics and expectations. Naruto turns around and comes face to face with Yamanaka Keiko. "Oh, Keiko-san. You surprised me." "I'm so happy for you, Naruto-kun," Keiko smiles. "I always wondered who Ino would end up marrying, and I don't think I could have asked for a better son-in-law. You know that you can call me mom now, right?" "It might take some getting used to," he admits. "And I'm very flattered you think so highly of me." "Of course." "So," she continues, features becoming suddenly sly, "when should I expect grandchildren?" Naruto chokes on his spit. "I don't think we've really discussed that yet." "Well, maybe you should start thinking about it," Keiko suggests. She embraces him and kisses him on the cheek before leaving to rejoin the reception. The blondes retire to their home hours later, both exhausted but happy. Ino is slipping out of her kimono when Naruto comes up from behind and wraps his arms around her waist. Hello, wife," he murmurs into her neck, planting his lips there. "Oh, hello, husband," she purrs back, "or should I call you Yamanaka Naruto?" "What, and give you the power in this relationship?" he teases. "I don't think so. I like the sound of Uzumaki Ino, personally." "You would? Well, what about my dad's name?" he suggests diplomatically through kisses sprinkled over her neck and under her jaw. "Namikaze Naruto, Namikaze Ino," she hums appreciatively. "Not bad, but we don't have to decide this right now, do we?" "I suppose not." He hesitates slightly, then continues, "Your mom wanted to know about grandchildren, and I've been told that there's expectations regarding a clan's line of succession, and..." "Naruto?" Ino interrupts. Don't worry about the details right now. Let's just enjoy the moment. His smile is hidden in his wife's skin. That's a good idea. They've been married almost 7 months when Ino wakes Naruto up early one morning with the news that she's pregnant. Given how late he arrived home from Umbu headquarters the previous night, it takes him a minute to actually comprehend his wife's words. When they finally register, the blonde sits up so quickly that the covers fly off the bed. Seriously? Ino nods. Just confirmed it. She hesitates before continuing, are you happy? He leaps out of the bed and grabs Ino around the waist, spinning her around. Of course. A sudden thought occurs to him, and he puts her down and looks her in the eyes. Are you? The platinum blonde smiles at him a bit shyly. Yeah, I think we're ready to become parents, don't you? There's a brief lapse in conversation as both blondes consider the ramifications of having a baby. I'm gonna quit Umbu, Naruto decides. What? Why? Remember what happened the last time you got pregnant? Naruto, that was just a fluke. I know, he surrenders, holding up his hands, but, I'm worried. Things can happen, he gesticulates, and it's clear he has no idea what exactly he should be worried about. Besides, I've been in Umbu for almost 3 years now, and you'll need someone to take over your genin team while you're being pregnant, the blonde finishes lamely. I'm not going to be helpless, she replies, a little defensively. I can take care of my team. I'm not suggesting you can't, Naruto placates, but I don't want you dealing with any undue stress. Plus, it'll be a good experience for me. Eno considers her options. After becoming a jonin almost a year before, she decided not to continue on in the torture and interrogation forces, finding herself ill-suited emotionally for the work. She decided to take on a team of genin, becoming a mentor for young minds as Asuma was to her so long ago. As loath as she is to leave them in the lurch, Ino knows that she'll eventually be put on maternity leave, and someone will have to take over her position. If Naruto wants to take over that job, and simultaneously remove himself from the dangers associated with being in Umbu, the idea of her baby being fatherless is far more likely with him in Umbu, then perhaps that's the best option available. Fine. But I still want to be there to supervise. Don't you trust me? She rolls her eyes. Now you're just pouting. I'm just trying to lighten the mood. Ino grins at him with the same foxy expression that normally decorates his face. I have a suggestion for that. They're relaxing after their morning romp, Ino's head resting on Naruto's chest, when the male blonde brings up the subject of their clan affiliation. It's been a debated topic ever since their wedding, especially since Ino is the heiress to the Yamanaka clan, but there has been no resolution. Neither blonde allows the subject matter to ruin their marriage, but with the newfound knowledge that a baby will soon become a part of their lives, the question of surname suddenly becomes very important. We should take your dad's name, Ino decides at length. Naruto blinks and tilts his head slightly so he's speaking more to his wife than the ceiling. Are you sure? I'm okay with becoming a Yama. No, she interjects. The platinum blonde rolls over so that she's now on top of Naruto, holding herself up so that her body is hovering above his. Baby blue eyes meet crystal blue. Listen to me, I've given this a lot of thought. There was never an official Namikaze clan in Konoha, but your dad made a name for himself and ended up becoming Hokage. When you were younger, you never had a clan either, and no matter how close you got to my family, you were never going to be able to become part of the Yamanaka clan. And even though you were always an Uzumaki, there will always be others in the world who have that name. But you're on the verge of becoming Hokage, just like your father did so many years before. And if we become the Namikazes, we'll have the opportunity to actually start another clan here in Konoha. It'll be for just our family, she emphasizes, and I think that, more than anything, is what you've always wanted. Naruto is silent for a long time, merely staring at his wife. Finally, he says, what about the Yamanaka clan? Ino smiles down at him. Well, I might not be able to take over, but the line of succession will still continue through me, to our children. He raises an eyebrow. As in, more than one. She settles back on her knees so she can drag one finger down his chest. Play your cards right, but we're getting off track. My point is that our marriage forged a bond between the Yamanaka clan and us. That means that I can teach any of my clan's techniques to my children, and while this baby will become the heir to the Namikazes, any of the others can become the next in line for the Yamanaka clan. Dad will back me up on that. You're sure you're okay with this? Absolutely. Besides, she purrs, I kinda like the idea of being the matriarchal founder of a clan. You're amazing, you know that. He lifts his head and kisses her. I love you. I know. I love you, too. So, who do we tell first? Is that really what you want to talk about right now, with your sexy, beautiful wife naked in bed with you? No, he grins, I suppose it isn't. Naruto sits with Neji in the courtyard of the Hyuga complex, watching Tenten throw a myriad of different weapons at a series of targets. How are things? Neji asks. The blonde quirks an eyebrow at his stolid friend in amusement. Shouldn't I be asking you that question? My wife's not the one who recently gave birth to twins. True, concedes the Hyuga, taking a sip of tea, but Tenten is the one more affected than I ever since she was disallowed from performing missions. She has been a little crazy. Naruto offers. I was going to say restless, but your word could be considered APT, smirks the older male. However, I would not recommend saying that to her face. Naruto shudders. Never. Still, Neji continues, it is quite a change to become a father. I've decided on a temporary leave of absence from Umbu to spend more time with the children. I would rather take some precautionary measures so as to not leave them fatherless. The words like I was went unsaid. A gurgle draws the attention of both males, and Neji reaches into the crib set up beside them and brings out his son. Naruto watches as Neji rocks the baby Hyuga, a slow smile spreading across the normally stoic man's face while he murmurs quiet words of comfort. The older male settles his son in his lap and then returns his attention to his friend. And how is Ino doing? She's okay, the blonde hazards. It's been a hell of an experience. Neji nods in understanding. I remember what it was like when Tenten was pregnant. Morning sickness, cravings, mood swings. The Hyuga grimaces slightly. You should be grateful that Ino doesn't have an endless arsenal of sharp projectiles at her disposal when you do something wrong. Kunoichi, they mutter simultaneously, and then exchange wan grins. Now that the due date's upon us, I'm really nervous about becoming a father, Naruto admits after a moment, blue eyes focused on the baby Hyuga playing with his father's hair. So was Neji, Tenten confides, seating herself beside her husband, their other child is nestled within the crook of her arm. And I was afraid of being a mom. It's only natural. You'll adjust to it pretty quickly. You think so? He asks hopefully. Of course. She observes Naruto for a moment before holding out the baby she's cradling. Here, she proffers, take Koji. After several seconds of hesitance, accompanied by encouraging nods from the married couple, Naruto convinces himself to reach out and take the young Hyuga. The blonde stares into the baby's pale eyes, and suddenly his anxiety about becoming a father falls away. His nerves revolving around not knowing how to act because he never had a father, his worry that he'll screw up taking care of his child, his fear that something will happen to the baby, everything just disappears. I'm ready, he whispers to the child. Naruto stares at the Hyuga for a moment longer before he realizes that he's supposed to be meeting Ino and her team for training. He stands and deposits the baby back in Tenten's arms. Thanks you guys. Anytime, Neji responds. Tell Ino we say hi, Tenten adds. Sure thing, the blonde replies, and then he's bounding away for the training grounds. He arrives to find Ino sitting in her usual spot against a tree, while her students, Hyuga Harumi, Aburameshu, and Tsukino Tama, sit around her and listen to her lecture. His wife is already aware of his presence, and Naruto waits patiently until she's finished her lesson before taking over the physical aspect of the kids' training. Her students are meant to specialize in espionage, and Naruto is well aware that his wife is far better suited to teach such subject material than he is. It's probably the reason the team was assigned to her care. They're done soon enough, and Naruto challenges the genin to attack him. The kid's frustration at being stuck doing only D-rank missions so he can stay in the village for Ino's sake is reflected in their determination to strike him. He grins a little at their effort as they throw everything in their arsenal at him, expelling a burst of wind to disperse the Kikai swarming towards him. Eno cries out a little just as he's escaping from one of Tama's illusions, and he immediately body flickers over to hear. Eno, what's wrong? Baby's coming, she gasps. I'm okay, just a little surprised. Despite his initial panic, Naruto picks her up bridal style and turns to the genin, who are all standing and staring at him. Training's being cut short, he informs them. Go home. I'll send you a message with our next meeting time. They all nod, but he's already gone. He arrives at the hospital, and after explaining the situation, a nurse takes Eno into a room to wait until she's ready to give birth. Naruto creates 2 clones, one for Tsunade, who has been their doctor throughout the whole pregnancy, probably because of her relationship with Naruto, and another for Eno's parents, and sends them off before following his wife down the hallway. Naruto has too much nervous energy to sit down in the chair by the bed, so he paces in short steps beside it. Eno, watching, lets out an exasperated sigh. Naruto, relax. Everything's fine. He stops briefly and turns to look at her. I remember the last time we were here for something like this. There's a haunted look in his eyes, and Eno knows that he's thinking back to the surgery she underwent for the ectopic pregnancy. Tsunade-sama's been checking everything every step of the way. She's already said that this'll be a perfectly normal birth. Things can go wrong. Not in this case, Tsunade confirms, walking into the room. She's looking over a chart in her hands. It'll still be a while before Eno's ready to deliver, but everything looks good. Maybe you should wait outside, Naruto. She suggests. No. No, he repeats, calmer, I want to be here. Let me stay. Eno groans as a contraction hits, and Naruto is immediately by her side. He helps her through it as Tsunade has taught him to do, and when it's over, the female blonde breathes, he can stay, provided he doesn't start panicking again. Naruto proves to be a boon the entire 17 hours of Eno's labor. By the end of it, the platinum blonde is sweaty and red-faced, but smiling. Tsunade places a bundle within her arms, and husband and wife look at their newborn son with adoration shining in their eyes. Naruto leans over and kisses Eno on the forehead. The 2 most beautiful people I've ever seen, he whispers. Eno releases a tired and short giggle. I think I need a shower before I can claim that title. My grandson needs his name, Tsunade reminds them. Great-grandson, Naruto corrects cheekily, and only the situation prevents the Hokage from belting the blonde. Michio, Eno decides. Namikaze Michio. Tsunade looks from Naruto to Eno to their son before she marks the name down on her clipboard. Welcome to the world, Namikaze Michio. Eno stands in the crowd of people before the Hokage Tower with a 2-year-old Michio holding her hand, most of the Konoha 11 surrounding them. The blonde boy tugs on her hand, causing Eno to look down into soft blue eyes set under Naruto's bright yellow hair. Mommy, I can't see. Large hands grab the boy's sides, and Michio squeals as he's placed on a shoulder. Better. Nods the boy. Thanks, Kojiaji-san. Sure thing. The Akimichi nudges his former teammate. So, how was he this morning? Barely ate breakfast, Eno confides. I don't think it quite hit him until today. That's understandable. Michio hushes them. Sheesh. Tsunade Bah-chan's gonna talk now. Eno grimaces slightly as Choji chuckles beside her. Hopefully he'll practice more respect while in office than he's shown Tsunade-sama, she whispers to her friend. I'd hate for him to continue to pass down his bad habits to our kids. You and I both know that if Tsunade-sama really minded, she'd have put an end to it a long time ago, Choji returns with a grin. The platinum blonde nods her absent agreement, but her eyes are riveted to the top of the Hokage Tower, where Tsunade is passing along the Hokage's hat to Naruto. They're sharing the space with a squad of Umbu, and Eno doesn't find it coincidental that Mantis and Falcon are standing closest to the 2 blondes. Naruto steps forward to address the crowd, the hat clutched in his hand. I've wanted to be the Hokage since I was little, he begins. Back then, I sought the title because I thought it would make people respect me. He snickers a little, as if someone's told a funny joke that only he gets. I wasn't very smart when I was young, I didn't understand that you needed people's respect to become Hokage. And that was an uphill battle because I never did anything to earn it, just like people didn't do anything to make me respect them. But then I met someone who wanted to be my friend. His eyes search the gathering, and Ino finds him looking straight at her. I've never told her this, but she earned my respect that day, the first person to do so. Thanks to her, I began to learn about things I'd never known before, what it was like to have friends, to have a family, to know love. Even though some of those lessons took a bit longer for me to learn, I eventually understood them, and each one taught me the responsibilities associated with being a good Hokage. And now, I can proudly stand before you and say that I'm ready to take up the mantle of Hokage, if you'll let me, he finishes, placing the hat upon his head. Thunderous applause and cheers greet his proclamation, and Naruto's mouth breaks into a wide grin. Choji leans over to Ino while he claps, making sure not to jar Michio from his shoulder. From that speech, I wouldn't have believed he was nervous at all, would you? Ino shakes her head. Looking back, she can't quite believe things have progressed so far since their time as children. Becoming Naruto's friend, his wife, starting a family together, none of those possibilities ever even crossed her mind when she tried using that first Shintenshin so many years ago. The Namikaze matriarch waves at Naruto when his gaze finds her again, and her opposite hand goes to rub her swollen belly as their second child starts kicking. She's suddenly grateful for the impetuousness of her younger self, for the opportunities she's taken despite her initial hesitance, for Naruto crossing the line in the friendship she started to embrace the chance to be something more. I wouldn't have it any other way. Chapter 5, Tracing the Line. Namikaze Ino puts down the book she's been reading and stands up. Hana, she calls, come on, let's go. A 5-year-old girl wearing a yellow sundress runs down the stairs, her shoulder-length platinum blonde hair flying about in her haste. Namikaze Hana is her mother's daughter in every sense, from hair and eye color to personality, including a stubborn streak and a dislike of not getting her way, and Ino and Naruto have had their fair share of issues dealing with her desire to attend the academy before her time. Their youngest child holds a strong adoration for her older brothers, and the highlight of her days seems to be when Ino takes her to pick up the 2 boys from school. Hana's only a couple months away from entering the academy herself, but her impatience is endless. Then again, Ino can remember a time when she, too, wanted to experience things ahead of time, and the memory of switching bodies with Naruto has never quite faded from her mind, especially since the results of it are shoved in her face on a daily basis. It would be better if Hana wanted to enjoy her childhood while it lasts, but far be it for Ino to try to dissuade her daughter from doing as she wants. She fixes Hana with a stern look. You left the boys' room as you found it, right? The girl's head bobs up and down, and after another moment of scrutiny, Ino nods in acceptance. All right then. Let's go see how your brother did. Mother and daughter clasp hands and walk out the door, the former locking it behind them. The house is the same one Naruto inherited from his father, Naruto not wanting to move his family away from their home, only with an additional story, added, courtesy of Yamato, after Ino gave birth to the couple's second child. What was originally a guest room became the baby's room, and after Hana was born, the 2 boys bunked together upstairs to make room for the youngest sibling. If there's one thing Ino is grateful for, it's that her children all get along. A sibling rivalry is something neither she nor Naruto have experience dealing with, considering their own status as only children, and the fact that their household is relatively peaceful is a blessing. Although, she realizes as they approach the academy to find the students outside, Michio running up to them with his new hitai tied around his forehead, the shinobi lifestyle has a way of turning everything around. Ino can only pray for the best as she congratulates her son on his accomplishment. Hokage-sama, might I speak with you? Naruto lifts his head up from the paperwork spread out before him. Of course. You know that you don't have to ask. It would be disrespectful not to, intones the other person. He raises a hand and removes the umbu mask from his face, revealing the sunglasses-wearing visage of Aburamesh Ino. Oh, a face-to-face, the blonde comments, equal parts bemused and surprised. This must be serious. So, are we talking as friends or shinobi? You realize that you would carry more sway as an umbu than a jonin, right? In normal circumstances, Shino agrees. But I believe that it would be more prudent to speak to you as a jonin. Why? Because I would like to request to become a jonin sensei. Naruto straightens a little in the Hokage's chair, taken aback by the request. He shares a brief look with Shikamaru, standing beside the desk with a stack of papers in hand, before returning his attention to the bug user. Well, can't say I expected that. Skill and professionalism aside, you don't exactly strike me as the type to foster the growth of genin, Shino. What's changed? It is difficult to maintain a healthy family relationship while in Umbu. Your son, Naruto realizes, somewhat used to reading between the lines of the Aburame's speech. He'll graduate from the academy in a year. You want to be around more to help him train. That is one reason. You want to learn how to interact more normally with people his age, so you have a better idea of how to raise him during his time as a shinobi, Shikamaru theorizes. Shino adjusts his glasses. I would like to ensure that I set a good example for my family to follow. Umbu is not an environment conducive to that. The doors to the office burst open at that moment, allowing Namikaze Jiro to run into the room and jump into his father's lap. Shikamaru rolls his eyes at the interruption while Shino oversees the scene placidly. Dad. Michiona graduated. And Mom said that we're gonna go out tonight to celebrate. Naruto laughs. That's good to hear. I'll have to be sure to get out of here on time, then. Was your brother excited? Jiro's fair skin, the only feature inherited from his mother, adopts a flush of color in embarrassment. Well, You ran here after you heard he graduated, didn't you? Mom was talking to him about it when I got out, mumbles the boy. As impetuous as your old man, Naruto reassures him. Most people wouldn't consider that a good thing, Shikamaru remarks dryly. Ignore him, the blonde says. He's just grumpy that he has to help finalize team assignments. He lifts his son up and places him on the ground. I've got to get back to work if you want me home in time to celebrate. Go tell your mother that I'll be there when I'm done here. And tell Michio I'm proud of him. He shouts as Jiro runs out the doors, closing them behind him. Something like that, Shino intones, breaking the silence and returning the three males to the conversation at hand. Shikamaru lifts an eyebrow. You want to emulate Naruto? The Aburame's lips twitch minutely before his stoic facade is back in place. Perhaps not in every aspect. Hey. But he is undoubtedly a good father, he concludes over the blonde's protest. My clan has not been known for being expressive. Over the length of our friendship, my understanding of more typical social interactions has increased. However, I would like a more interactive approach to further my knowledge. There is a bout of silence as Naruto allows Shino's words to wash over him. Shino doesn't believe that he's a bad father, but he seems to want to have a relationship with his kids more similar to the one Naruto has with his own than the Aburames have traditionally held. Naruto finds himself wanting to honor his friend's desire. Shikamaru, he states at length, do you have a list of who graduated? The Nara steps out of the office and returns moments later with several sheets of paper clutched in his hand. Just arrived from the academy, he says, offering the papers over. Naruto grabs it and scans the list, a grin forming as he works his way down it. All right, Shino, Team 12 is all yours. Mantis will be sorely missed, he was a terrific Umbu captain. Shino nods. Thank you. And Shino, the blonde continues seriously, placing the list on his desk, I'm entrusting you to take care of this team. The bug user checks the names of the genin he's been assigned, and his body shifts marginally in a display of surprise. Understood, Hokage-sama. I will do my best with the opportunity you have granted me. He places the paper back on the desk, bows, and then departs. Shikamaru grabs the paper and gives it a once-over, his dark eyes narrowing on the members of Team 12. Naruto, was that really the best idea? Shino's a great shinobi, but he's not the most socially adept person to become a teacher. Have a little faith, Shikamaru, assures the blonde, returning to his paperwork. Shin'll keep the kids safe and give them a good education. He's all about teamwork. Now give me that list, we need to figure out who's going to teach the other teams. The Nara sighs before settling himself in for a discussion about which Jonin will make the best team leader wear. Good luck, kids. Namikaze Michio slams the door shut behind him, grumbling nonsense as he stalks through the house. The noise draws the attention of the rest of his family, as two platinum blondes poke their heads out of Hana's room. Jiro's feet appear on the stairs, and Naruto glances up from where he's reading a report on the couch. Something you'd like to talk about? The latter asks, bemused. You. Michio accuses, and the boy's ire only causes Naruto's amusement to grow. You just had to put me with that annoying, bossy, guy. He throws his hands up in the air and heads up the stairs to go to his room. Jiro scrambles quickly out of the older boy's way. Ino comes out of Hana's room, her daughter trailing curiously behind her. She raises an eyebrow at Naruto. Care to explain? Her husband shrugs, trying to hide his smile. No idea. The expression on Naruto's face doesn't even come close to convincing Ino that he's as clueless as he's pretending, and she rolls baby blue eyes in mock exasperation. Michio, could you come down here, please? She calls. No. That wasn't a request, Ino replies dryly. Silence greets her announcement, and she gives Naruto a pointed look. What? He asks, the picture of innocence. He gets his stubbornness from you. She chooses to ignore that statement, instead redirecting her efforts at her eldest child. Now, Michio, she orders, or I'll force you to come down here. The boy's stomping and mutterings become quickly apparent, all too aware of his mother's methodology for getting her kids to do what she wants. Ino gestures to the couch when he appears, and Michio, arms crossed, sits down at the end opposite his father. Now, what happened? Begins Michio, stabbing a finger at Naruto, put me on a team with. Whoa, hold it right there, buddy, the older blonde interjects, grabbing his son's finger between thumb and forefinger and lowering it. I made absolutely no decision with respect to team assignments. That's the academy's job. The only thing I did was assign your team a teacher. He pauses to fix his son with a curious look. Do you have a problem with him? No, Shino-sensei's fine. He took us out for dinner to help build our teamwork. Ino shoots a surprised glance at Naruto at the mention of Shino being Michio's teacher. She mouths the bug user's name in query, but Naruto merely waves it off and mouths back later. It's my teammate that's the issue, grouches Michio. Just the one? Ino asks. Well, I don't have a problem with Koji, he says matter-of-factly. Ino is unsurprised by this revelation, given that Hyuga Koji is, for all intents and purposes, Michio's best friend. Koji and his older twin Koichi are the only members of the next generation of the Konoha 11 older than Michio, and in fact, are the only ones in his grade level aside from. Oh, Ino realizes, covering her mouth with a hand to hide her own amusement. It's Shika, Michio seethes, confirming Ino's theory. Narashika is Shikamaru's daughter, and several months Michio's junior. Despite the close relationship between the two families, Michio and Shika have had trouble in the recent year seeing eye to eye. Ino supposes it's probably due to some trait carried by all Nara women, regardless of being born into the clan or marrying into it, that causes them to be bossy and controlling, a lot like her. Naruto likes to teasingly remind her, as very little of Shika's personality is reminiscent of her father. Unfortunately, Michio developed a rather strong aversion to being told what to do, something Ino hopes desperately is a phase. At the same time Shika stepped into her bossiness, resulting in friction between the two children. You should look at this as an opportunity to mend your relationship, Naruto suggests. You two used to be very close. Michio snorts something that sounds like fetch chance, and Naruto continues, a bit sterner, listen, regardless of your personal feelings on the matter, Shika is your teammate now, and that means that you have to look out for each other. Protecting your comrades is an important part of being a shinobi, understand? Yes, Michio mutters, sounding properly scolded. Good. The blonde's voice becomes upbeat again. Besides, you never know what'll happen. You might end up falling in love with her. Yuck. Dad. He whines. That'll never happen. You'd be surprised, Ino interjects. Did I ever tell you how your father and I met? MOOM. I don't wanna hear this. You'll stay right there if you know what's good for you. Michio leans back into the couch with a groan, and Ino smirks a little at his discomfort. She pats Hana, who's been standing behind her the whole time, on the back and gestures for her to go to her father. You, too, Jiro, she motions, taking a seat in the armchair set perpendicular to Michio's end of the couch while Naruto grabs Hana and places her in his lap. The middle child descends the rest of the stairs and takes a seat quietly between his father and brother. Well, when we were around Jiro's age, I tried to use Shintenshin no Jutsu on your father. Back then, he was a big troublemaker, and I only knew him as this annoying boy in class. Several hours later, after the children have gone to sleep, Naruto and Ino lay in bed together with the darkness as their only companion. Shino, huh? Ino prompts. He asked for a genin team. I trust him to do a good job. Ino sighs a little, and Naruto knows that she's more apprehensive about Michio being an active shinobi than about who his teacher is. Hey, he says quietly, they'll be safe with Shino. All of them. And even though Michio might not get along with Shika too well, he'll still look after her. Yeah, I know. She turns to face him, their noses inches apart, and a slow smile spreads across her features. Bet you they get married. No way, that's a losing bet for me. Fine, she huffs, disappointed. Bet she makes the first move. You're on. And you can't give Michio any advice. Damn it. The beeping of the heart monitor is the loudest sound in the private hospital room. Naruto stands at the foot of the bed his family is clustered around, gazing forlornly at the figure resting there. Tsunade is sitting upright, her face drawn and haggard compared to the brightness that is Hana sitting in her lap. Little of the appearance Naruto is so used to is present in her form, the once flawless-looking skin now wrinkled and dark with age, the hair gray and wiry. Only her brown eyes remain the same, sharp with intelligence and awareness. The Sunin laughs a little at something Hana tells her, but the noise is broken by a series of coughs that she muffles with a fist. When she recovers, she beckons to Ino with a finger, and the younger woman leans over so Tsunade can whisper something in her ear. Naruto is too far away to hear what's being said, but the monologue is fairly long, and when it ends in another fit of coughing, Ino pulls away with tears in her eyes. She blinks and wipes them away. Say goodbye, kids, she says, and her husband senses a slight hitch in her voice. Tsunade-sama wants to talk to your father in private. Bye, Tsunade-baa-chan. Obliges Hana, throwing her arms around the older woman's neck. Tsunade holds the child to her tightly for a long moment, mouth moving in quiet words of wisdom before letting go. Love you, too. Michio, who has become more responsible in the months post-graduation to genin, makes to pick Hana up underneath her arms, but Tsunade stops him, whispers something in his ear, pulls back to see him nod slowly, and then kisses him on the forehead, in the same place she did to Naruto so many years ago. He mumbles a quiet, love you, too, Tsunade-baa-chan, as he grabs his sister from the bed, allowing Tsunade to turn her attention to her other side, where Jiro stands next to his mother. The Sunin goes through all the same motions with the middle child, eliciting another, love you, too, Tsunade-baa-chan, from the boy before the family departs, Ino glancing back one last time as she shuffles the kids out the door. Naruto takes a seat in the chair to Tsunade's left. You've done a damn good job raising your family, brat, Tsunade tells him. Then she smirks. Considering your personality, I'm not sure whether I'm more impressed or surprised. He tries to smile in response to the jibe, but the expression is weak and strained. Death of loved ones is, rather fortunately, a concept which Naruto has little experience with. His parents died before he knew them, the Sandaime passed away defending the village, and Gaara came back to life. The one person Naruto became truly attached to who died was Jiraiya, and he is well aware that the old pervert passed away in a climactic battle, just as he wanted. It doesn't necessarily make the thought of his old teacher hurt any less, but with the current situation playing out before him, Naruto wonders if perhaps Jiraiya's death in a faraway land wasn't better in some ways. Because watching Tsunade waste away before his eyes is slowly killing him. Naruto's discomfort is practically a tangible presence in the room, for Tsunade says, Naruto, death is a part of life. Honestly, I'm a little surprised I've made it this long considering how many times I've used the Sozo Saisei. When this doesn't have the desired effect of placating her successor, she continues, Naruto, I've had a good life. I've had the opportunity to watch you grow up, fall in love, have a family, achieve your dream, and all because you brought me back here all those years ago. So thank you, for giving my life renewed purpose. You continue to take care of your family, you hear me? This time, Naruto manages to grace Tsunade with a small upturn of his lips. The expression is still sad, but there's the reassurance in it that indicates he has no intention of not following through with the demand. Always. They talk for a little longer, about how Naruto was in the past, about how the family is doing, about what will happen in the future, until Tsunade is hit by another bout of coughing, this one much fiercer than the last. Naruto holds Tsunade's hand as the heart monitor's beeping echoes ominously in the room. After a long moment, the Sunin turns to offer the blonde a wan smile. Heh, I think it's time, kid. Naruto sniffs to restrain the tears coming to his eyes. Tell Ero Sennin I say hi. Tsunade chuckles weakly. It'll be good to see that old pervert again. She pauses briefly, then continues, I'm proud of the man you've become. Goodbye, Naruto, I love you. He kisses her on the forehead, returning the gesture from so long ago. I love you, too, Granny. Tsunade's content smile makes the high whine of the heart monitor seem insignificant in the sudden lifelessness of the hospital room. That night, long after the funeral, Naruto and Ino lie in bed, her head resting on his shoulder. How are you doing? Naruto attempts to shrug. Sad, he admits. I thought it sucked that I never got to say goodbye to Jiraiya, but watching Tsunade just die. He sighs, a long, solemn sound, and turns bloodshot eyes to his wife. I think that was the hardest thing I've ever done. Ino places her hand on his arm and rubs it comfortingly. I know, she whispers, thinking back to how it felt to watch Asuma's life fade away, but things'll eventually get better. He nods mechanically, and silence falls between them as they remember the life of the Godaime Hokage. The quiet is broken by the soft padding of feet, and a small voice calls, Mommy? Daddy? Both parents look up to find Hana standing in the doorway, eyes downcast and a stuffed fox clutched tightly in the crook of her elbow. What is it, sweetie? Naruto asks. Can I sleep with you tonight? I don't want to be alone. Can you spend the night tonight? I don't really want to be alone. The memory of asking Ino the same question after Jiraiya's death strikes Naruto hard, and it's only in that moment does he realize that, while his experience with death is limited, his children have never had anyone close to them pass away. Hana, in particular, is far too young to have to go through such a tragedy, especially by herself. Of course, he replies, patting the bed between him and Ino. Simir. Hana approaches the foot of the bed and clambers atop it, crawling across it to eventually settle between her parents. She snuggles beneath the blanket and turns baby blue eyes to her father, they're watery and ready to spill over with tears. I miss Tsunade Baa-chan. For what feels like the umpteenth time that day, Naruto tries to smile encouragingly, but it falls horribly short. I know. I do, too. He pulls her into a tight embrace, letting her cry into his shirt. After several moments, he carefully passes his daughter off to Ino, telling both of them, I'm going to go check on the boys. He stands up and walks to the doorway, almost colliding with Jiro as he exits. Tries the boy, I know, Naruto says, understanding in his voice. He bends down and picks up his son. Come on. I can walk. Jiro squawks, indignant. I know, repeats his father. Just indulge me. Jiro falls silent at the request and lets the older blonde carry him into his parents' bedroom and deposit him on the bed. He settles in next to Hana and hugs her close. One left, Naruto comments. I'm going to. He trails off as Ino points to the doorway, turning to find Michio standing there. The boy's blue eyes shift back and forth, clearly embarrassed to be seen standing at his parents' doorway as if he was much younger. I heard Jiro get up and wanted to check on him, he states. Naruto and Ino exchange glances, unconvinced. The former decides to play along, knowing that his eldest doesn't want to be treated like a child. I think your brother's spending the night in here. Do you want to come in? Michio shrugs, trying to act nonchalant. Yeah, I guess so. The genin settles himself in the bed so he's facing his brother's back, and Naruto finally climbs in and sandwiches his children in between himself and Ino. You know, he says, it's okay to cry when you're sad. No, Michio mumbles into the pillow, voice cracking slightly, I've gotta be strong. Sometimes being strong means knowing when to admit that you're weak, Naruto tells him gently. Michio is silent for a long moment. Then he rolls over and throws his arms around his father, quiet sobs racking his body. Let it out, Naruto whispers, silent tears trailing down his own cheeks. The more you love, the more it hurts. Just never forget that our precious people never truly leave us. As his family slowly drifts off to sleep, Naruto wonders if Tsunade is satisfied with how he took care of them in the face of such a tragedy. You'll be missed around here, Granny, I hope you continue to watch over us. Damn straight, Tsunade's voice echoes in his mind. Naruto stares blankly at Ino. I have to do what? His wife sighs. Jiro's a genin now, which means he'll see and do things that civilian children won't. And Michio's been a chunin for a couple of months. Honestly, we're overdue on talking to him. Well, why didn't we talk with him before this, then? Ino fixes him with a look. Did you want to do this twice? At Naruto's head shake, the Namikaze matriarch continues, that's what I thought. Now go on. But why do I have to do this? Because that's what we agreed on, you get the boys, I get Hana. I've never even had this conversation before, Naruto tries desperately, grasping at straws. How do I even know what to say? Naruto, you have two options, either talk to them, or I'll talk to them as you. The blonde blanches at the implication and walks resignedly out of their bedroom. There are some things that he feels a boy should hear from his father, and no matter how he feels about it, delivering the message himself is preferable to having Ino use him as a puppet to do so. He ascends the stairs to the second floor and knocks on the boy's bedroom door, pushing it open when Jiro says he can enter. His sons are both sitting on Michio's bed, piles of kunai, shuriken, wire, and other ninja tools laid out before them. Michio is showing his brother how to best prepare for his life ahead as a genin. Hey Dad, they chorus upon his entrance. Boys. He greets, and then pauses, unsure how to press forward. His lack of experience in being a father has never been more evident over the years than right now, in a moment where he must speak to his sons about a topic he himself was never told about. Do you, have a minute? His sons exchange glances with each other and then shrug. Sure, they respond, and then Michio continues, are you okay, Dad? You're acting weird. Naruto sits on Jiro's bed and massages his forehead with one hand. Fine, he replies. Under his breath, he mutters, I'll be better once this is over, but yeah, just peachy. He knows this is a necessity, though. The memory of his and Ino's first time looms in the back of his mind, and he wonders if the night would have gone any differently had someone, Jiraiya, Kakashi, Inoichi, sat him down and explained things. Not that he regrets the night, but experience has certainly helped their love life, and foreknowledge might have been nice. Of course, his kids probably don't want to hear about their parents' intimacy, so Naruto tries to push the thought out of his mind to better focus on the matter at hand. Look, he says, since you're both shinobi of Konoha, you two are mature enough now to make your own decisions. And that includes. He gulps slightly, curses Ino in his head, and then plows forward, relationships. Michio seems to grasp the subject matter before his brother, and whether that's because he has a couple of years over Jiro or because the younger boy is as much Naruto's son as Hana is Ino's daughter is debatable, for he groans in embarrassment. Dad, he whines, rising to his feet, I don't wanna listen to this. Sit, Naruto commands, embracing the Hokage side of himself, and Michio does so half-heartedly. Deciding a little honesty might go a long way, he says, I don't want to talk to you two about this either, I don't even want to think about you two doing that, he gestures vaguely, but it's your mother's orders. But, if you don't make this difficult, I'll start to teach you the Rasengan. Michio's blue eyes widen in excitement. Seriously? At his father's nod, the oldest child crosses his legs and relaxes, deciding that whatever verbal torture Naruto will put them through is worth learning the signature technique of the Namikaze lineage. Jiro still looks partially lost. "Hey, Michione, what's Dad talking about?" Naruto grimaces, knowing that he'll have to spell it outright for the middle child. "Sex, Jiro," he replies before Michio can. He pulls an uncomfortable face at the same time as his eldest, and Jiro's gaze swivels between father and brother, mildly amused at the similarity in expression. Deciding to just get it over with as soon as possible, the Hokage continues, "Now, there'll come a time in your life when..." Sometime later, what feels like days, but can't have been more than half an hour, the three males plod down into the living room, where Ino is splayed out on the couch, reading a book. She lowers it slightly to observe the procession, taking in the haunted looks on all their faces. "How'd it go?" she asks Naruto as he passes, the two boys already heading out the door. Her husband shakes his head. "Horrible, I think I traumatized Jiro. I think I traumatized myself. I'm never doing that again." Ino pats his arm reassuringly. "Fortunately, you won't have to. I'm proud of you," she adds. "Yeah, well, if you'll excuse me, I have to go pass down a violently destructive jutsu to two kids who, in all likelihood, would like nothing more than to inflict bodily harm upon me." "That's nice," Ino says, already returned to her book. "Just make sure to be home in time for dinner. We're eating with Shikamaru and Choji tonight." Naruto groans and heads out the door, following his two sons to the training grounds. "The next advice I pass on to them will be to not get married," he swears to himself. Naruto sits at his desk in the Hokage's office, looking over the latest set of applications for Jonin to become genin instructors. Graduation is taking place within the next couple of days, and all the blonde kin focus on is the fact that his daughter will be taking the test in about a year's time. Michio is already a Takubetsu Jonin and Jiro is a recently promoted Chunin. Time seems to fly by so fast. Did it pass this quickly for us? He wonders, thinking back to the time of the Konoha 11. His friends have all grown up from the days of playing pranks in the academy and making childish boasts about their strength to one another. Hinata, Choji, and Shino are leading the Hyuga, Akimichi, and Aburame clans, and the latter even takes on specialized missions when required, having retired from teaching after his first team advanced through the ranks. Kiba is the leader of Konoha's tracking division, Sakura heads up the Konoha hospital, and Shikamaru remains the head of intelligence and tactics, as well as doubling as Naruto's personal advisor, and preparing to take over as Nara clan head. Sai is a captain in Umbu, Neji, and Lee are both accomplished Jonin, and Ino and Tenten have each trained two genin teams of their own. They've all achieved so much in what feels like such a short time that Naruto often loses track of how old they all are. And if the rumors are true, many of the next generation are poised to usurp the Konoha 11's records in the coming years. Michio is already a prime example of that, not that Naruto's advancements hold any linearity to compare to. But then again, Naruto supposes that's how things are supposed to go. It is the premise of the Will of Fire that the next generation will carry on the dreams, hopes, and aspirations of the previous one. The doors to his office burst open, and Naruto looks up to find one of the Chunin assigned to guard Konoha's great gates before him, hands on his knees and taking heaping gasps of air. Hokage-sama. He manages. Tsukino-san's team, just returned. Naruto grins. Jiro has been gone for almost a week now with his team, and as much as he knows his children need to find their own paths, it's always nice to have them come home. Thank you for letting me know. The Chunin shakes his head. Hokage-sama, they were ambushed. All the blood drains from Naruto's face as the Konohanin continues. They were spotted by Hyuga Harumi. Tsukino-san was seen trying to carry his team into the village. They're in critical care right now. Naruto isn't even in the office by the time the Chunin finishes his report. There's a flash of yellow-orange chakra and a gust of wind that sends papers flying into the air as he dashes for the hospital, praying for his son's safety. Almost nothing good ever comes from visiting a hospital, Naruto decides. Births, obviously, and, well, that's all he can come up with, because the sheer quantity of the bad memories vastly outnumbers the 3 times Ino has gone through the labor of having their children. The failed mission to retrieve Sasuke, Ino's ectopic pregnancy, the myriad of shinobi who have passed away since taking up the mantle of Hokage, Tsunade's death. And now Jiro is in a room with bandages wrapped around his chest, gauze taped to his face, and his right leg in a cast. Sakura has only just given permission for the boy's parents to enter the room, Jiro having been in surgery for multiple fractured ribs. Ino enters from the hallway, where she has been speaking with Sakura, to find her husband sitting in a chair across from their son's bed, his hands clasped together so tightly his knuckles are white. She walks over to him and sits on the chair's arm, looping her own around his shoulders. "I talked to Shikamaru," she informs him quietly. "He's going to look after the desk for a while. Do you want me to go get Hana? I'm sure her sensei would understand." "No, don't. She deserves to know," Ino tells him gently. "She would want to know." I know. Just, not now. She shouldn't see him like this. She shouldn't see me like this is how Ino interprets her husband's statement. It's a good thing Michio's on a mission right now, she thinks. Placing her own hand on top of Naruto's clasped ones, she whispers, "Sakura said he'll recover. Mostly. He's alive, Naruto, we should be grateful for that." Her fellow blonde nods slowly. So far, one of Jiro's teammates has already passed on while the other is still in surgery, and looking at extensive physical therapy, and Tsukino Tama is recovering in another room, probably being questioned about what happened. There's a low groan from the bed, and Naruto immediately rises to his feet, nearly dislodging his wife in the process. In the next moment, he's beside his son as Jiro opens groggy blue eyes for the first time since being brought into the village. "Dad." "Hey, buddy," Naruto whispers, running a hand through his son's hair. "How are you feeling?" "Hurts." Jiro mumbles. A sad expression crosses the Hokage's features. "Yeah, it'll feel like that for a while. You should rest." "K. Mom. I'm here, sweetie," Ino says, coming to stand by her husband's side. "Michio ni? Hana?" His parents exchange glances, and then Ino replies, "We'll bring them by to visit when you're feeling better." Jiro nods meekly, and within moments, his eyes close due to a mixture of medication and exhaustion. Hana learns of her brother's condition later that night, when Naruto and Ino are calm and stable enough to explain to her the situation. Michio returns from his mission 2 days later and immediately rushes to the hospital to check on his sibling. Naruto, already returned to his duties as the Hokage, doesn't think he's ever been more proud of his boys. They've always been close, but Michio has never seemed as protective of his brother as he does in this defining moment. After a week passes, Jiro is cleared to start moving around the hospital. Naruto and Ino walk beside him as he hobbles along the corridors, and by the time the trio returns to the room, the Namikaze child is a bit breathless. Sakura is waiting for them upon their return, and after helping Jiro into his bed, she begins to take notes on his condition. She leaves several minutes later, followed by Ino, who promises to return in a little bit, and Naruto drags his chair over to his son's bed. "Dad." Jiro prompts. "Yeah. I don't wanna be an active ninja anymore. I've never been as good at it as Michio is, and after this last mission, well." He trails off, keeping his eyes averted to the bed sheets so he won't have to look at his father. "I thought I could maybe take over at the flower shop, or become a teacher at the academy." He hesitates before asking, "Are you disappointed?" A large hand lands on Jiro's blonde spikes and ruffles them affectionately. "I could never be disappointed in you," Naruto reassures with a grin. "I'll talk to Iruka-sensei about a position at the academy, and your mom can ask Inoichi-san about the flower shop, okay?" Jiro offers his father a smile in return. "Yeah, thanks, Dad." When the younger blonde yawns, Naruto gets up and tells his son to get some sleep. He exits the room silently to find his wife standing outside the door, waiting patiently for him. "I spoke to Sakura," she starts, walking beside him as he strides down the corridor. "She said his leg will never fully recover, he'll always have a slight limp. He won't be able to continue being a ninja, it's too much of a handicap." "We already talked about it," Naruto assures her. "He decided to quit all on his own." Ino looks mildly surprised. "Oh, well, are you okay with that?" Naruto grants her his usual grin. He's alive, Ino. That's all that matters. Do you have everything you need? Yep. Are you sure? Sleeping bag, kunai, rations. Hana releases an exasperated sigh. Dad. I've already double-checked everything. Will you relax? Naruto tries to stop himself from restlessly shifting his weight like he used to as a genin, but all he manages to achieve is an awkward shuffling of his feet. I know, sorry. Every day, Hana seems to look and act more like her mother, and while neither Namikaze parent has ever tried to temper their children's less desirable personality traits, Naruto knows that stubbornness and overconfidence aren't the best qualities to possess on a mission. Especially since it's Hana's first C rank, and it'll keep her outside the village walls, outside his protection, is all Naruto thinks, for several days. The memory of his own C rank turned A rank mission is still quite vivid, even decades later. He rubs his forehead with one hand to prevent himself from launching into an explanation of how she'll understand one day when she has her own children. The idea of his baby girl having sex both terrifies him and makes him feel far older than he is. His worries are eased slightly just knowing that the mission she's assigned isn't expected to see combat, but I guess I've been a bit overprotective ever since your brother. Hana seems to understand, for she steps forward and hugs her father tightly around the waist. Jironia's fine, Dad, and I'll be fine, too. She releases him and grabs her stuff, throwing her pack over her shoulder. I've gotta go, otherwise Sensei'll be mad that I'm late. See ya in a couple days, Dad. Love ya. Bye, sweetie, love you, too. He returns as the door closes behind her. Staring at the wood, he convinces himself that Hana will be safe, that the reason he assigned Tenten to be her teacher was because the weapons specialist is a kunoichi and a mother and a friend, and completely capable of keeping her team, and his daughter, out of harm's way. Fair, slender arms drape themselves around his neck, and Naruto suddenly becomes aware that his wife is behind him. How long will she be gone? She asks quietly. Couple days, at least. You know, she whispers, lips next to his ear and voice seductive in a way that makes a shiver run down Naruto's spine. It's been a long time since we had the house to ourselves. Throat dry, Naruto can only nod, with Hana now an active ninja gone on her first C rank mission, Michio deployed on his own assignment, and Jiro running Yamanaka flowers, and living in the loft above the store. This is the first time the Namikaze adults have been empty nesters. We should celebrate. Naruto tries to argue that he should really get to the office, that Shikamaru is already annoyed with him because Michio and Shika have finally admitted that they're dating and that he won't cover for the blonde for long, but the urge to be comforted overcomes him, and he thinks that putting up with the Narazire is totally worth a little morning sex. He turns around in Ino's embrace and shoots her an almost boyish grin. Race you to the bedroom. Hey, Dad, Mom, Koji-san, Shikamaru-san. Naruto looks up from his desk as the former members of Team 10 turn around to find 19-year-old Michio entering the Hokage's office. Michio, he greets, can this wait? I'm in a meeting right now. He raises his eyebrows in a manner to indicate that his son should have better manners than walking in just because the Hokage is his father. Not that he never did the same thing when Tsunade was in charge, but the situation is completely different now, if only because it's being done to him. Ino seems to recall the same thing, for she puts an end to his posturing immediately by saying, like you never barged into meetings with Tsunade-sama all the time. The mission details can wait a minute. Choji leans over and whispers, what about not promoting his bad habits in your kids? I gave up on that a long time ago, she replies. Some things are just genetic. Naruto sighs and mutters something along the lines of the Hokage not being as all-powerful or respected as he should be. So what's up? Well, Michio begins, running a hand through his blonde spikes, I'm actually here to ask Shikamaru-san something. He turns towards the Nara and continues, I was hoping to get your permission to marry Shika. The final words come out in a rush, the eldest Namikaze child clearly nervous of Shikamaru's response despite knowing the older man since he was a child and being able to take him in a fight. Shikamaru only manages to stare blankly at the young blonde in return. What? The others in the room have no such issue expressing themselves. At the same time Choji offers his enthusiastic congratulations, clapping his stunned best friend on the back, and Ino squeals in delight and hugs her son. Naruto releases a wailing, "You can't." All attention turns to the Hokage, Ino shooting her husband a threatening look. Michio looks suddenly crestfallen. "And why not?" the Namikaze matriarch growls. Naruto shrinks back upon himself. Well, if Shika gets married, then Shikamaru's gonna retire, he stresses. "And I need him." "Ignore your father," Ino advises her son after a moment, "he's bad at prioritizing things." "Now come with me," she continues gaily, hooking an arm through the crook of his elbow, "we have a wedding to plan." Her voice grows increasingly fainter as she leaves the room and walks down the hallway. "I'm thinking we have it. Wait." Naruto calls. "We haven't finished our meeting. You can fill me in at home." Ino yells back. Naruto slumps back into his seat, defeated. Choji looks between him and Shikamaru, a knowing smile gracing his lips. "Women, huh?" He reaches out and grabs the mission scroll from off the desk. "I'll just take this, you guys probably got things to talk about." "So?" Naruto starts once the Akimichi leaves, "I guess we're gonna be family now, or something." His blue eyes widen piteously and his lower lip begins quivering in a facsimile of a pout. "You're not gonna just abandon a family member in need, are you?" Shikamaru drags a hand over his face to hide his friend from sight, closing his eyes and massaging the bridge of his nose. "She's not even married yet and I already hate my in-laws. How troublesome." "Welcome to Yamanaka Flow, Ino-san, hello." Ino smiles. "Izumi-chan. You don't have to be so formal, you know." The younger girl flushes prettily. "I know. What can I help you with, Ino-san?" "Just came to visit," assures the blonde. Izumi hums noncommittally and returns to tending a vase of flowers. Ino smiles fondly at the other girl's back. Her dedication to the flower shop and all-around geniality are traits which the Namikaze matriarch admires in her daughter-in-law. Jiro is lucky to have found such a woman to settle down with. As if summoned by her thoughts, the middle Namikaze child thumps down the stairs that lead to the loft, arms laden with a bundle of blankets. Despite his limp, Jiro moves fairly well, enough so that Izumi clearly doesn't worry about him stumbling with their newborn son in his hold. Blue eyes blink at her in surprise. The gesture reminds Ino of a time long ago, when a young Naruto would look at her in that same, confused way. "Damn, she's getting old." "Mom," Jiro says, finishing his descent down the stairs. He passes his son over to Izumi and walks over to Ino, hugging her and giving her a kiss on the cheek. Unlike Michio, who has inherited his father's height, Jiro doesn't have to bend over to accomplish this task. "What are you doing here?" "I came to visit Aoki. It's been so long." Jiro blinks again. "We only got out of the hospital last week." "Really? Feels longer." That sounds like something her mother would say. Oh God, is she turning into her mother? That's a terrifying thought. She shakes it from her head and turns a mock glare on Izumi. "And why are you working? You should be taking it easy, having Jiro wait on you hand and foot." Izumi bows her head, allowing brown bangs to obscure equally chocolate eyes. "I wanted to." "Moom." Jiro complains, interrupting his wife. Ino notes bemusedly that he's never really outgrown the impetuousness and situational obliviousness he inherited from his father. "I offered, but she wouldn't listen to me." "Well, here," Ino says, holding out her arms. Izumi deposits her son in his grandmother's hold, and Ino curls her limbs around him protectively. "Go relax, I've got this." "Hello, Aoki," she coos, "how are you?" She rocks him gently back and forth, remembering how it felt to hold her own children in the same manner. "He's as quiet as you were," she tells Jiro softly. Then she sighs in mock despondency. "I had such high hopes that you wouldn't take after your father." "What's wrong with Dad?" Nothing, but let's face it, if you were more like me, you wouldn't have needed my help to get her," she says, gesturing with her head towards Izumi's back. "Thanks for the help." Jiro offers unsurely. Ino nods in satisfaction. "You're welcome." She's interfered in her child's love life. Yep, she's her mother. When did that happen? The bell above the shop's door chimes, and the Namikaze pair turns to find Naruto standing in the doorway. "I came by to see my grandson," he announces at his family's blank stares. Ino blanches a little. Somehow, the revelation that she's becoming her mother combined with the word grandson is rather unsettling. She suddenly feels aged beyond her years. "Here he is," she gestures, holding up the bundle of blankets. "Now we're leaving." "Here," she continues, handing the child over to Jiro as Izumi walks over, a confused expression on her face. "But I didn't get to see him." Naruto protests. "You'll see him tomorrow," Ino responds, pushing him out the door. "He's not going anywhere." Hana's birthday dinner at the house, she reminds her son and daughter-in-law. "And don't you have work to do?" she asks her husband. "Shikamaru's." "Not the Hokage," Ino interjects. Now she's bossing her husband, a man of higher status, around. It's the final nail in the coffin that she's turned into Yamanaka Keiko. "Heaven help me," she thinks, shoving him down the street. As the flower shop's door swings shut, she hears Izumi comment, "I hope we're as happy as your parents when we're their age." Ino feels extremely humbled by the compliment, but a stab of pain accompanies it. "When we're their age," she repeats to herself. "Damn, I'm old." Ino leans against the doorframe of her old house, overseeing her father and daughter embroiled in mental training. Given the Yamanaka clan's specialization in mental manipulations, meditation is an important aspect of all the members' training, a point Ino keeps telling her daughter, especially after the fiasco that resulted in befriending Naruto so long ago. The room they're all in is one meant to dampen all outside sources of noise and influence, the walls inscribed with symbols meant to promote serenity, seals preventing any mental mishaps when using any Yamanaka jutsu, researched and applied by Ino, Inoichi, and Naruto, are placed in the center of each wall, including the floor and ceiling. Hana, now a 14-year-old chunin, has begun delving into the more complex secret techniques of the Yamanaka clan in preparation for her eventual takeover as clan head. Ino can't think of anything more suitable than having her only daughter inherit the position that was originally meant for her. Nor does she consider any instructor better for Hana than the one who tutored her so many years ago. Inoichi can teach Hana the things about running the clan that Ino never learned because of her relationship with Naruto. Naruto frequently says that it's the duty of the next generation to surpass the previous one, and Ino agrees wholeheartedly. The platinum blonde moves from her position, closing the door silently in her wake, and settles into a lotus position beside the other two occupants. Inoichi opens one eye and closes it immediately, shuffling his seat to create an equilateral triangle. Linking telepathically with her father, Ino asks, "How's she doing?" "Well," Inoichi replies, and she can tell he's impressed. "She's quite determined, not to mention a quick study. You've trained her well, you should be very proud." "So should you. She's your granddaughter, after all." "True," Inoichi concedes, smiling. "What's she working on?" Ino asks after a moment. "Why don't you ask her?" Ino huffs at her father, ignoring his amused mental chuckle, and searches for the mental connection that leads to her daughter. "Hana," she prods. "How's it going?" "Huh," comes the surprised response, "before, Mom." Her sensing could use work, Ino informs her father dryly. Inoichi opens up the mental connection so that all three of them can hear each other. "We haven't started that yet," he responds, but her progress with telepathy is astounding. "We only started today, she has amazing cognitive abilities." It's Ino's turn to be surprised. "Really? Hana, that's amazing." Pride swells in her chest, and in a confident voice, she says, "You definitely get your intelligence from me and not your father." Inoichi snorts openly and stands up, breaking off his connection to the two women. Ino senses her connection with her daughter falter for a moment in what she presumes to be embarrassment. "You really think I'm doing good?" "Absolutely," Ino assures her. "We'll call it a day, Hana," Inoichi announces, prompting both women to open their eyes and rise to their feet. "Come by tomorrow and we'll work on perfecting your focus some more." "K." Later, Inoichi-san. "Hold up, Hana." The younger girl halts and turns around to face her mother, who beckons her forward. When she's standing before the older blonde, Ino continues, "I brought something for you." She holds out her hands, in which glimmer a pair of silver stud earrings. Kenji wanted to give you these himself, she says, referencing Asuma and Kurenye's son, now that you're a Chunin, but he's on a mission at the moment, so he gave them to me for safekeeping. They're yours now. Hana takes the earrings from her mother and stares at them for a moment before replacing the old jewelry she's wearing with the new pair. Delicately placing them in her mother's hand, she whispers, "Thanks, Mom," and hugs her around the middle. After a moment, she lets go and skips out of the house. Ino's gaze flits from her daughter's back to the silver earrings in her hand, the same pair Asuma had given her so long ago after becoming a Chunin alongside Choji. They grow up so fast, don't they? She asks her father. The Yamanaka clan head nods. Faster than you ever think possible. You've raised an amazing daughter, Ino. I couldn't be more proud of either of you. She smiles at him before trailing Hana back to the Namikaze residence. Yeah, I know. Michio, stay behind please, Naruto requests. The rest of you are dismissed. The Hokage waits for the other Konohinin in the room to leave before leveling his son with an even look. Noticing the younger Namikaze's distress, he heaves a sigh and tries to become less imposing. Michio, he says gently, what happened? Ambush, replies the other blonde quietly. Saranin, I wasn't expecting to run into trouble. Neji-san saw them right before they got the drop on us, but we were outnumbered, and he told us he'd hold them off while we got away. So I took my team and ran, leaving him to. Naruto decides that now is a better time to act as Michio's father rather than his superior. He walks over to his son and holds him in an embrace he hasn't had to use since Michio was a child. After a long moment, he says, sometimes, bad things happen to good people. Sometimes it's our fault, sometimes it isn't, and Naruto still remembers coming home and finding Ino passed out in a pool of her own blood, but all we can do is learn from our mistakes. He can feel his son nod into his shoulder. Barring the circumstances, Naruto is almost comforted by the fact that Michio, despite his age, is still willing to lean on him for certain things. He was starting to get afraid that his children would start to distance themselves from him as the years dragged on. Do you think Koji will forgive me? Michio asks, so quietly Naruto isn't sure he's meant to hear the question. The older blonde thinks back on his life, trying to come up with a situation to compare his sons to. He comes up horribly blank, and decides that ad-libbing has never failed him before. Neji did what he thought was right, he explains. He was a true believer in the will of fire. Koji's the same way, he'll understand. And he'll probably need his best friend to help him heal. Michio pulls back. Naruto sees that his son's eyes have a slightly hollow look to them, but there are no tears. Do you think Tenten-san would let Shika and I name the baby after Neji-san? Naruto smiles. I think she'd like that very much. Come on, let's go ask. Tenten takes the news shockingly well when the Namikaze duo reaches the Hyuga compound. The Hokage attributes it to growing up and marrying Neji, who has always been the picture of pragmatism, early beliefs in fate aside. Having a career as a ninja means being aware that you can die at any moment, and on some level, Naruto thinks that Neji and Tenten have both fully prepared for any eventuality. When Michio asks about honoring Neji's memory by naming his unborn child after the fallen Hyuga, Tenten smiles thinly and manages, it'd be a good way to remember him, wouldn't it? Michio returns her shaky smile, before inquiring as to Koji's whereabouts. Tenten points him in the right direction and turns back to Naruto when the younger blonde walks out of sight. Tears are brimming in her eyes, though they've yet to fall. Are you going to be okay? He asks. Tenten shrugs. Maybe, eventually. Neji always thought that. She shakes her head. Well, I think he did what he thought he had to. Rescuing Michio, he always felt he owed you a debt. Maybe he found peace in that. I'll miss him, but I'm just glad for all the time we did have. It'll take a while. Naruto hugs her, two friends mourning the loss of someone special. When Tenten sniffles, the blonde whispers, I'll leave you alone for now. There'll be a ceremony as soon as it can be managed. He releases Tenten and watches her walk back to her house before departing for the memorial stone. His hand reaches out, fingers caressing the spot where Neji's name will eventually be carved. Thank you, my friend, he murmurs, for saving my son's life. I hope you find peace and watch over us, you'll be sorely missed. Only now, confronted by the silence of solitude and the smooth surface of the memorial stone, does Naruto cry for Hyuga Neji. Ino stands patiently beside the altar as Naruto walks their daughter down the aisle. The duty of officiating the ceremony lies with Shikamaru, who is trying his hardest not to look either bored or irritated at being burdened with the responsibility, so the Namikaze patriarch can view Hana's wedding as her father and not the Hokage. She remembers standing in her daughter's place 27 years ago, and has it really been that long? Now she really is old, with a nervous feeling in her belly and only Naruto's bright face serving as a modicum of reassurance. She observes the male standing in memory Naruto's place, her soon-to-be son-in-law, with approving baby blue eyes. By sheer happenstance, Hana fell in love with a member of the Yamanaka clan, some far-removed cousin with strawberry blonde hair and cerulean eyes. He's a reserved, if stubborn, boy, a good balance to Hana's headstrong, motivated persona. The fact that marrying him returns succession of the Yamanaka clan to Ino's lineage without any real political hassle is a coincidence that has both Namikaze founders and Inoichi breathing a sigh of relief. Naruto pretends to dislike him, but Ino knows that he's pleased with the match, as pleased as he can get when handing the protection of his only daughter to someone else. The blonde is a bit tight-lipped and pensive as he takes his place beside Ino, listening to Shikamaru start the narration of their daughter's wedding. Ino nudges him in an effort to correct his behavior. Weddings are supposed to be happy occasions, after all, and he tilts his head slightly, offering her a wan smile that doesn't reassure her. Only years of training in being able to school her features prevents Ino from frowning outwardly. Naruto has always had a weakness related to protecting those he cares for. Letting go of his precious people is something that has always bothered him. Failing to rescue Sasuke and then having to take him out, finding out about Jiraiya's death, watching Tsunade slowly pass away, Naruto considers these his personal failures, no matter that there was nothing he could do. Neji's more recent departure, despite living a full life past a shinobi's typical prime, is just the latest reminder that things are not as within the blonde's control as he would like. In a way, it is perhaps even more poignant because the Hyuga died protecting Michio. Ino entwines her fingers with her husband's, trying to be a comfort to him. This is supposed to be a happy occasion, she chides telepathically. I'm happy, he assures her. Ino gives him the equivalent of a mental glare, an impressive feat considering their communication utilizes no method for facial features to be seen. Apparently her silence is telling enough, for the blonde man concedes, okay, maybe happy isn't the right word. But I'm not upset, I'm just nervous. They're so young, can Teo really keep her safe? Ino doesn't broadcast the fact that she also thinks the bride and groom are very young to be getting married. When Hana gets an idea into her head, it takes a lot to make her let go, knowing that Naruto's anxiety will only be fed by the admission. Instead, she thinks, they'll be fine. And if not, they can always look to us for guidance. Naruto hums in pensive thought. I guess you're right. I'm always right. From the corner of her eye, she sees his lips twitch. Of course, how could I forget? His crystal blue eyes remain slightly saddened as they watch Hana and Teo walk through the proper customs, and Ino knows that there's more to the wedding than he's letting on. Naruto is strong when other people can't be because he considers that his duty, and he doesn't like displaying his weaknesses. Both are aware that she can easily probe his mind to find out what's bothering him, but ever since the Shintenshin mishap that brought them together, Ino tries not to use her clan techniques upon him without permission, unless it's for his own good. But Naruto sighs heavily into her mind. I just don't want to let her go. Ino blinks, surprised. Naruto isn't an overbearing father, nor does he play favorites, even if his relationship with the boys is slightly stronger than the one he has with Hana, but she doesn't remember him being this disconcerted when either Michio or Jiro got married. Then again, she thinks, as their hands unclasp so they can applaud the new couple, Neji was in attendance at the boys' weddings. And it is then that Ino remembers that Naruto, who started life with so little, takes loss harder than anyone else she knows. Gaara's death is the proverbial, and literal, nail in the coffin. Ino doesn't really know how to explain it, because their generation is just reaching 50, and Gaara doesn't exactly leave for missions that put his life at risk, but Sakura theorizes that his premature demise has its roots in Cho's unstudied one's own life reincarnation technique. Even as someone who studied the field of medicine, Ino understands only half of what her pink-haired friend says, ratios of chakra transference and lifespan calculations. Naruto, understandably, takes the news rather hard. That night, after a day of mourning for the departed Kazekage, he rolls over in bed and tells Ino, "I'm gonna retire." Half asleep, it takes the platinum blonde a moment to register what he's saying. When she does, she sits up and fixes him with an incredulous look. "What?" The Namikaze patriarch nods to himself, expression pensive. "Yeah, I think it's time. I want to spend time with the people I care about, before." He sighs, shakes his head, and continues, "Being Hokage interferes with all that." Ino closes baby blue eyes and massages the bridge of her nose. It's a coping mechanism she's adopted, from Shikamaru, she's sure, to help think through situations before reacting to them. "Naruto," she begins, "it's not your fault that Gaara died." She leaves out the fact that, if it weren't for Cho's sacrifice, Gaara wouldn't have lived past 15, and her husband would have most likely had to fight his reincarnated corpse during the Fourth Shinobi World War. The years have taught her to blunt her sometimes tactless comments. "You couldn't do anything for him, or Neji, or Tsunade, Jiraiya, Asuma, it's not your fault," she emphasizes. "It's not about that," he returns. "It's just, I've lived out my dream. Maybe now it's time to let someone else live out theirs." She gives it a moment of thought, then guesses, "Kano Amaru." The blonde nods. "He'll be a good leader. Besides, now I'll get to live out my new dream." Ino raises an eyebrow but doesn't ask for elaboration. If Naruto means to tell her, he will. Subtlety and secrecy are traits her husband is sorely lacking in. Over the next week, Naruto spends his time in meetings with the clan heads, the council, Umbu captains, and the other higher UPS within the Hidden Leaf. Kano Amaru is privy to all the gatherings so he can understand the position he's filling. Ino sees very little of her husband, but she also understands that the matter of succession is an important one, and that once Kano Amaru is instated as the Nanadaime, Naruto will have plenty of free time on his hands, so she doesn't comment. Kano Amaru's coronation ceremony, despite being as full of pomp and circumstance as Naruto's, feels more subdued to Ino, but she attributes it to the occasion personally feeling more like the end of her husband's era than the ushering in of the Sarutobis. Her family gathers at their house once the ceremony ends, a rare occurrence considering how hectic Michio's, Shika's, and Hana's schedules are. Jiro sits on the couch with Naruto, the older blonde's lap occupied by Aoki. From her spot in the kitchen, Ino can overhear her husband asking the 5-year-old about his education and laughing at the response. There's a tug on her pants, and Ino looks down into 2 pairs of eyes, one brown, one baby blue. Neji and Ko are both 2 years old, Michio's son and Jiro's daughter, respectively. "Ino Baa-san?" asks the latter, and the Namikaze matriarch withholds a grimace at the title. She loves her grandchildren dearly, but her hair looks more silvery than blonde nowadays, and she has always been a bit vain about her appearance and age. "How come Hana Baa-san's so fat?" There's no helping the snort that escapes her lips, confronted by innocent faces who have yet to experience the wonders of pregnancy. The question is both valid and hilarious. She kneels down to put them at approximately eye level and feels her knees pop and crack. Naruto probably had the right idea with retiring, after all. "Well," she says, "Hana Baa-san is pregnant, which means that in a little bit, you'll have a new cousin to play with. How's that sound?" Neji blinks solemn brown eyes at her, his hand clasped tightly with Ko's. "K," he says, and Ino wonders how much Michio, or, more likely, Shika, has been teaching him. He's very serious for a 2-year-old, reminding the kunoichi of his deceased namesake. She curls a finger towards them in a beckoning gesture, and both children lean forward, expecting to hear some big secret. "Also," she whispers, "you shouldn't say that she's fat. Yamanakas don't get fat. Don't call anyone else fat, either," she adds, thinking of the Akimichi clan and how the word is taboo around Choji. It's bad manners. When the 2 kids nod, Ino gives them each a small piece of mochi to keep them occupied and then shoos them from the kitchen. It's hard to believe that Hana is already pregnant, but her marriage is still relatively new, and Ino can still remember being that age and discovering the thrill of sex. At least she's married, she thinks. Michio is the only one of her children to wed late in his life, though she thinks that was more a function of his active shinobi lifestyle than any lack of interest. She can fondly recall him at the age of 12, complaining about the girl that she bet Naruto he would marry. With how small the gap is between the generations, Ino thinks that maybe, if she's lucky, she'll live long enough to see great-grandchildren. Naruto asks the approaching Ko and Neji where they got their treats from, and when they point to Ino, his gaze finds hers. His blue eyes, as crystal clear as the day they became friends, hold hers, and he shoots her a genuine smile, one that has been remarkably rare since Neji's death. Surrounded by the people that matter most to him, Naruto appears 30 years younger, and Ino can only hope that he always has a reason to smile so brightly. That's it for part 2. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.